Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, Associate Editor of Audioholics. I'm here with.
Rob H. This is AV Rant. We're a question and answer show where we take your questions on home theater and audio video and we answer them.
That
That's how it
is
works.
way too many wheres in one sentence.
Gotcha. That's what we get for like starting last minute, no preamble. I'm
Nothing.
like, what's our tagline? I'm like, I have no idea.
I don't know. Say some words, and then I'll tell you they're not good enough.
Yep. Could have predicted.
So hopefully you guys are seeing a better picture of me. Not that it really
Ah.
matters, but I got a Logitech camera from. I went to Clint, what I like to call Clint shopping. So I went to Clint's house, and Clint said, "I've got a bunch of crap. Take
Mm-hmm.
some of it home with you because I don't want it here anymore." So he said, "You want this camera?" I'm like, "I got a camera. I don't need a camera." He goes, "No, for your computer." I'm like, "Yes." It's a Logitech one. It has like it's like a long thing.
Yep.
He says it might be an older version of the one they have out right now. He says he's had it for a really long time, but it's never really used it. So it kind of clips onto your monitor.
All right.
Anyways, on my side, it looks better. Hopefully, it
Yep.
looks better for. Usually, I even look crappy to me, so hopefully, I look better to everybody else. Anywho, that was about all AV wise I got from him, at least so far. I actually went over there because he had a lawnmower that he didn't need, so he gave it to me because I needed one because mine broke, and
Oh.
then I got it home, and his wouldn't start, so now I'm gotta
Uh,
get that one fixed.
it's not like you were a large fan of the one you had before, so
Knew it was
can
not.
only get better.
That's right. It isn't. Yes, yes, yes. No one really cares about this. All right, we are AV Rant, the podcast where we answer your home theater and AV questions. We do that every week, and to do that, all we need from you is some questions with which to answer. To do that, you send them to rob@avrant.com, tom at avrant.com. We may be getting a new email address that's just like questions@avrant.com.
Really?
I think so. I think we want to do that. That
Eh?
way, I can like take my AV Rant email and just like shut it down because that is just a ridiculous amount of
Well,
spam that I'm
don't do.
getting recently.
Oh, I see. Well, I would say
Really
don't do
bad.
that because there are certain to be a lot of people who won't hear this particular podcast for
Oh, I know.
many
It's not happening
whiles
yet.
to come.
It's not
Yeah.
happening yet. Don't
All
worry.
right.
But anyways, for now, it's either Tom or Rob, or preferably both, at avrant.com. You can come to the website, which of course is www.avrant.com. Leave a comment there. Go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast. It's all one word. Very popular place to leave stuff for us, and we do
Mm-hmm.
find it usually and answer it usually and mention it on the podcast usually. Always. When we find it, we definitely mention it. Let's see. Twitter at First Reflect is Rob, at avrant_Tom is me. And there's Google Plus. Whatever. We record these every week on a Monday at 9 p.m. If you would like to sit in on the listening session, be like a fly on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
then you can do so by looking me up on Google Plus. It's just plus Tom Andry. You friend me, I put you in a circle. The circle would be the listeners, and every time that we have a listener, we do these things. You get like an invite. Now, it does not mean you have to respond to every invite. You can ignore it. Some people respond every single time, and say, "I'm sorry, I cannot come to this." I'm like, "I'm sorry that I do not care," because because we're just doing it anyways. It's just you're getting on this because you've asked, sort of, to be on the listener notification. That's all it is. I'm not spamming you. It happens once a week. If you don't want it, say don't do it, and I'll take you off. Uh, and you can also follow us on YouTube, which is at my Mr. Namas. That was weird.
Easiest to just search AV space rant, and
Yes,
then
on a
many videos will appear
many
in
videos
your
will
search window.
yield to you. This will hopefully have the best video of me to date.
And
Now,
I would like to just emphasize that throughout the show, we will mention links to products or
yes,
videos or articles or things like that. All of those links that we talk about, they show up on avrant.com. So our actual website, that's where you go to find all the links that we
that's
mentioned.
right, because you cannot link them up on YouTube because the YouTube thing is stupid. And you have to put the entire URL in there, and I'm not doing it. So you just go to AV Rant and you'll find it. Okay. All right. Now we do have some listeners of the month. I'm sorry, listeners of the week this week. One, two, three of them. It looks like three.
Yes.
We've got one now. Steven and Jordan are both listeners of the week because they gave us donations. They did that by going to avrant.com, clicking on the buy us a cup of coffee, and leaving us a PayPal donation, which is great. Okay, it's just a credit card thing, and it's a buy. whatever you feel like giving. So
Hmm.
support the podcast, pay for hosting. So one of these days I don't know.
It's
It was
set
going to
your
buy
own
me a
price,
camera,
says.
but I Clint shopped it, so it doesn't have to do that any
There you
longer.
go. That's good.
Sweet.
Tom's saving you money all over the place. Yeah,
Oh,
it's as little or as much as you would like to give. It is entirely up to you.
yes, that's right. What else? Oh yeah, so
Jordan.
Jordan and Steven gave us donations, and Jordan also thanked us for our advice regarding his the $400 2.1 system we talked about
Mhm.
last week. He ended up getting some Andrew Jones Pioneer speakers, a Yamaha RXV 375 AV receiver from Accessories for Less, because the $50 Denon shockingly did not work.
Oh, I feel bad.
I do feel bad, but $50.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of saw that one coming. Anyways, and a Def Tech Supercube 2000 subwoofer for only $240. That's great. Great.
That is a good deal. Yeah.
That is
Can't complain about a Supercube for $240.
You cannot. I mean, someone could, but it wouldn't be us. Sushmit got his is also a listener of the week because he got his SVS PC 2000 subwoofer and let SVS know that it was our recommendation. He says movies like Interstellar and Prometheus feel like completely different movies with the subwoofer in his system, and he'd like any quick suggestions we have for other movies that he should check out. There's just so many lists of good bass movies that it's almost sort of pointless to do this too much. Um, I tend to these days there's almost good bass in everything. It's kind of weird.
It's kind of true. Yeah.
There's almost always a scene someplace that will have some decent bass in it, and when that happens, you go, oh well, look at that. Who knew that this literary masterpiece that's been put to video needed a 20 hertz tone? But they were right. It did need 20 hertz tone because it has made me more interested in what I have to.
Yeah, there's the surprising ones like 310 to Yuma. Like you're not necessarily expecting that to have some deep bass, but it's got like a crazy loud low gunshot in it, and then there's the whole train sequence, and that's really crazy bass heavy. So yeah, that
not liking that movie, but I don't know.
yeah, I like to mention Troy, that one with Brad Pitt and Eric Bana, just because hearing the bass properly actually does transform the feeling of that movie. Like that's what he was describing, right? He's like, these movies actually feel different.
Less crappy, I guess. I mean, it just went on. Somebody kill somebody.
Well, then don't watch the director's cut because that's even longer. And since they made it even longer, they redid the score, but they didn't have the money to like properly redo the score, so it was all like synthesized and horrible.
Oh, it's like Casio keyboard. Sweet.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like one guy on a synthesizer. It is atrocious. So do not watch the director's version of Troy. Yeah, I mentioned like, of course, the Batman movies, and then there's the Star Wars movies, Jurassic Parks, like Lord of the Rings, all the usual suspects, right? There's a gazillion things to watch.
There's also like the new Godzilla movie. There's the newest Transformers movie, which I think is even on Netflix.
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim would be a great one for you just skip all the talking. Go straight to the robot punching things.
So Schmidt got in touch with me on Twitter, and right away I was like, well, if you want movies that are transformed for the better by their audio, in fact, it might be their only redeeming quality. There's Man of Steel and Transformers Age of Extinction. He got back to me, he's like, both of those movies are awful. I'm like, yes, that's why I put a winky face, because I wasn't entirely being... I don't really mind Man of Steel.
Oh, I cannot get through it. I've tried. I've watched it once, got through it once, and since then I've tried to watch it 3 times, 3 separate occasions. Have fallen asleep each time. Fallen asleep in a movie where they destroy New York. No. All right, who cares?
Well,
all
completely off topic. Yes, your mic is still low in volume for some crazy reason. It's doing that again. That was before the show, folks. We fixed it, and then it broke itself again.
Unfixed itself. Let's see if this makes a difference. Because it's being weird.
Oh, there you go.
There he goes. Is that better?
Kind of. I don't know.
Really.
It's not worth futzing with.
All right, I'll get it in post.
Yeah, that's right. If it's difficult to hear what Tom's saying, and I'm obviously way louder in the video, then that's the reason for the audio-only version, folks. That gets edited after the fact and will be fine. So, can check that out in your podcast feed and iTunes or some such. I did want to mention we have one other person who gave us a donation this week, but he will be mentioned next week because that donation arrived today, sort of like in the afternoon. And I'm basically cutting off everything at Sunday night. I'm like, if it's not here by Sunday night, it's not going to the topic list for this week. It's going into next week. So we know we already have a listener of the week for next week.
There you go. We got one.
We're holding you in suspense. Who will it be?
Who could I be? Wait, I know who I am because I wasn't mentioned. All right. News items. The Clips Reference Premium Series speakers have now were Atmos enabled. The up-firing thing. So,
they have towers with the up-firing drivers built in, and they have a separate module that you can sit on top of any speaker or shelf that, of course, has a flat surface. As some people pointed out, they're like, my speakers have a curved surface on the top. How am I supposed to use a module? I'm like, well, you're not. So that's kind of how that goes.
Yeah, lame.
I'm kind of surprised how many Dolby Atmos modules are available now. There's quite a few.
They want to capture that early adopter market while it's here.
Yeah.
Because it's going to go away very, very quickly.
There's quite a few options out there, though, if you're looking into it. Yeah.
Let's see. There's some HDR news. Looks like if you don't have full array backlighting, you can just jack up the backlight setting and everything will look crappy. So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that was as I was mentioning. Samsung's JS9000 and JS9500 series, their top two series in their lineup. Those are some of the only TVs available right now that can do full high dynamic range, accept signals from outboard players like upcoming Ultra HD Blu-ray players in the near future, and can do the wide color gamut thing and all that. Well, Samsung has some TVs in lower ranges that they're calling SUHD, that they're saying are capable of HDR. They have their JS8500 series, which is the first ones that are actually flat instead of curved. And they just recently introduced their new JS7000 series. So both of these are lower cost, they're flat, they claim they can do HDR, but not really, because all they're doing is jacking up the backlight, and then on the JS7000 series, it's actually an 8-bit panel, not a 10-bit panel. And the reason that's important is because I like the way they put this on Home Theater Geeks. He had some guests on who were explaining HDR, and he's like, imagine you have a stairway that takes you 100 feet upwards, and you have 255 steps to get there. All right, those are going to be small steps, no problem. But now imagine you expand the stairway that it's 1,000 feet high, and you still only have 255 steps to get there. Those are suddenly going to be some very large steps that you might not be able to swing your leg up and over. That's the issue when you...
I would be behind that if you put some climbing holds on it someplace.
Yeah, really.
I think I'd be behind that.
But it's kind of the reason we want, when we're going to high dynamic range, to have more than 8-bit. We want at least 10-bit, where there are now 1,024 steps to make it up those 1,000 feet in the air instead of 100 feet in the air in that analogy. So yeah, basically, this has me a little bit worried, because when things are done properly with high dynamic range, I mean, most of the studios are seeing it on like Sony's OLED studio monitors that can do it, or they're seeing it on Dolby's own studio monitors, which are like liquid cooled and can get up to 4,000 nits. Like, that's how they're seeing it, and of course it looks fantastic there. And then if you get the really expensive consumer models, those look okay too, but to bring it down to a price that's actually affordable, well, they're cutting a lot of corners, which makes me really worried, because people are going to see something that's being marketed as high dynamic range, they're going to be like, wow, that looks kind of crappy, I don't really want that. So once again, manufacturers,
4K is working these days, where people look from display to display and go, yeah, that one's $2,000, that one's $800, I'll take the $800, because they look the same to me.
So I'm worried that they're shooting themselves in the foot with this whole venture.
That doesn't sound like the AV industry at all. How dare you, sir?
Well.
How dare you? Anyways, we also have a controller now for, I guess there's VR controllers. There's Oculus has the Touch, Morpheus has the Move, and Vive has something that looks like planter spikes. They literally look like weapons. But they're supposed to be sort of like along the lines of the Wii nunchuck thing.
Well, yeah, they're like motion tracking, and they have little reflective dots on some oddly positioned very angular surfaces on the top. Like, I'm certain the reason it looks like that is because if it looked like smooth, then it would look just like PlayStation's Move, and they'd get sued for, I don't know,
Yeah, maybe, or
trademark
maybe it's because
infringement.
they like 3D printed it and it's just
Yeah,
easier to do it that way. Because
yeah,
that's
flat
what I thought.
surfaces. So all of them are working on the same sort of idea. They're going to have a camera. That camera is going to be looking at some sort of sensor that is, some little reflective piece that's mounted onto these controllers. Then the controllers also have buttons, or in the case of this HTC Vive headset,
Yes.
it's going to have like little track pads for your thumbs instead of analog sticks. So all of them are approaching the same sort of thing. I think the Oculus Touch controllers just aesthetically look the most pleasing because at least they kind of look like, I don't know, like gauntlets that you're kind of holding on to. They're kind of round and wrap around your hand, so they kind of look the least ridiculous.
Oh, that narrows it down. That's
Yeah.
great. All
Anyway,
right.
that's the news.
All the news is fit to talk about. All right, let's go to the comments and the questions now.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time in a while,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just going in strict chronological order, Rob has reordered the questions so that we get the purchasing decisions and setup questions first,
Yeah.
with feedback, comments, and discussions, suggestions, and other stuff that aren't quite as time sensitive. Have been moved a little bit down the list. That's the way I prefer to have it, anyways. Especially for some of these really super theoretical, like, what do you think about the future of that? I'm like, we'll see. So this is how it's done this week. We'll see if that continues
Yes.
on.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure people who are like, help me decide what to buy or help me figure out how to set this up. I wanted to make sure those folks got answers in a somewhat timely
Because we
fashion.
have got a
So,
lot of questions. We had
so
a full podcast worth of questions at the end of last podcast.
I know. So
So,
please do not think that we are aiming to ignore. We are going to get to everything that has reached us. That is a promise. That's going to happen. So yeah,
we have never not answered the question that we knew
exactly.
about.
That's right.
Jack, think this about his Shure 846 in-ear monitors, since we talked about them 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
For over-ear headphones, he uses the pair of Sennheiser's HG598 headphones.
I
He likes
use those
this.
too.
Oh, there you go. He
Mhm.
likes the sense of open space they produce and their comfort. Are they open back? Is that why he's saying
They
that?
are open back and they are very comfortable. Like you can wear them for hours and hours and hours and hours because they're very circumoral. Like they have a huge opening for your entire ears to sit inside.
Yeah.
And yeah, they don't get hot and they sound very good. So I use them for TV because then I can watch TV without the least bit of worry about comfort or anything like that.
Yeah. He's considering more expensive over-ear headphones,
Mm.
though. He's wondering what we think of Sennheiser's more expensive 600, 650, 700, 800 models. He'd also like to know what we'd recommend for more expensive headphones, and he's wondering what sort of headphone amp we would recommend to drive them. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of options here.
Hmm.
Obviously, I've listened to the Oppo PM1s and
Right.
PM2s, or as I like to call it, the PM2s, because I can't ever recommend the PM1s unless you literally are just worried about the aesthetics. I was
Yeah, I mean, if you want the metal instead of plastic, and you
dead
want the
cow.
real lambskin instead of the faux leather,
Is it
then
lambskin? It is lambskin, isn't it?
yeah,
It's not cow. It's
and
lamb.
that's worth what, $500
I think it's
difference?
five bones.
400, 400. Well, 4 to 5,
700
something in there.
1,200. I thought that was what the difference is.
I'll look it up, but yeah, it's a lot of money for no change in
The
sound.
driver, the design, everything else is the same. It's just metal versus plastic, lamb versus fake. Uh, I can, since you're getting exactly the same sound and you're paying for sound, and I mean, unless you're really worried about that, the PM2s are great. I use those all the time.
Hmm.
They are open back, so you have to worry about sound leakage, but you obviously don't care about that. Comfort-wise, they're extremely comfortable.
Hmm.
Um, the only time I ever had a problem with comfort was I was lying on the ground because I was stretching my back because my back was hurting, and I was trying to wear the headphones at the same time. And they kept sliding down because they don't super grip your head, which makes them
Okay.
comfortable.
Yeah.
They don't super grip your head, so I just had to like tilt them forward so that they were on my forehead, and they were fine. But yeah, that's not the best, use of any headphone. But normally I don't have any problems. So they're my go-to headphones. Those are
Sure.
$700, $800.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
700,
$400 difference. The
Yeah.
PM2s are $700. The PM1s are $1,100.
1,100. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, just to comment on the Sennheisers that he mentions, I'm familiar with the 650s. I'm not very familiar at all with the 600 or the 700, so I won't comment on that. The 650s are great sounding headphones. Um, they have some things like the headphone wires are split and they're quite thin and a little bit thumpy. So I'm not a
Oh, that's
huge,
irritating.
I mean, if you're sitting still, that's fine. But and they're not the easiest headphones to drive. The 800s are, of course, like their flagship.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
seen those. Those things are
they are,
ridiculous. They look like computer fans on your
yeah,
ear.
yeah, they're large. They are difficult to drive. They definitely benefit from having an external amplifier. And they are very resolving to the point of I would suspect, like, I haven't listened to them for hours on end, but I could easily see how they would become fatiguing if you listen to them for really, because they are very crisp.
Mm.
Which is actually the reason why a lot of people who own the Sennheiser 800s actually modify them with like a little piece of foam inside the ear cup to just absorb a little
Really?
bit of the
Oh,
sound
that's
ringing
a
around in there.
fantastic feature right there. That's really what you want to hear.
Yeah, in your $1,500 headphones, you're putting a little 50-cent piece of foam to fix them.
Yeah.
That's fun. But I mean, certainly extremely resolving if that's sort of like your main thing that you're after. But I got to be honest, I kind of like the planar magnetic headphones that are out there. I don't have experience with the Oppos yet. I have zero reason to doubt Tom's opinion of them because everybody agrees that they're really good. But I'm familiar with the Audeze planar magnetic headphones, their LCD line. I was waffling between the LCD 2s, which cost $1,000, and the LCD 3s, which cost $2,000. And I was trying to decide, like, oh, do I really like the 3s better enough than the 2s for them to be worthwhile? But actually, I ended up preferring the LCD X, which is in between at $1,600,
Yeah.
$1,700, something in that range.
Mine's cheaper.
Yeah,
Mine's
definitely.
half.
Exactly. So, I mean, I would certainly be looking at the Oppos, but the LCD-X, I actually like them because they are more efficient and easier to drive.
Well, right. Yeah, that makes a difference too.
Yeah, which it makes a big difference. And I'm not crazy enough to think that something that requires like 2 watts of power to drive your headphones is superior in some way. I kind of like headphones that work with regular amplifiers or could even work straight out of your phone if you wanted them to, and the LCD X's fit that bill. So yeah, those are ones I would say are worth checking out, and I think the 650s are worth a listen. The 800s, I don't know if they're really worth their asking price. I got to be honest, but that's just my opinion.
As far as amps go, I use the Emotiva Stealth
Yeah.
2. I don't know what they're called. I don't think mine's there anymore. I think they have a different one.
No, they have it. It's under their Emotiva Pro line
Oh,
on their
okay.
website. So the
Yeah.
Stealth is still there, and it's a little under $500. So it's not nearly as expensive as a lot of the options out there, but
Yeah.
it's also not super cheap.
Uh,
Yeah.
Oppo makes theirs, which is probably
Well, that's $1,200 though.
about as good as it gets. But he didn't give us a price, so hell, $1,200.
That's true.
You could either buy his headphones or my headphones and one of my amps.
Right.
That being said, you don't need an amp for my headphones. There's that too.
Yeah, I will say Emotiva does have a less expensive option. I think it's about $270. They call their XDA2.
Yeah.
That is a separate DAC and a headphone amp as well. It's not a super powerful headphone amp. For example, if you look at the 600 ohm ratings, which is like as crazy high resistance or impedance rather as pretty much any headphone amplifier would drive, it's only putting 8 milliwatts into a 600 ohm load, which is very low. I mean, most are like 30 milliwatts or less. That's pretty common for most headphone amps. So if you're seeing a rating substantially higher than that, that's a very powerful amplifier. He was asking about some of the, I know it's your favorite company name, but SCHIIT.
Don't
Yes,
say it.
Okay, well, we've said it before. It's no big deal. But that's who
You've
they
said
are.
it before.
They have some very powerful amplifiers, but they separate their amplifiers from their DACs. So they want you to buy 2 things from them instead of just one. Mainly my concern with headphone amplifiers is that they're quiet. I care more about them having a very low noise floor than their ability to pump 5 watts into headphones, which is completely unnecessary. So I will say, like, as far as the specs go, Oppo's $1,200 one is like the craziest in terms of signal to noise ratio I've seen.
Yeah.
It should be very, very
They
silent.
basically took their audio section out of their pop-in player and
That's
put it
right.
in the box.
That's
They
right.
did. put a little amp on it. That was it. So, I mean, if you're really worried about that being said, if you get my headphones, you don't need the amp anyways.
Yeah.
So, bada bing, bada boom. Save you some more money. Mine's the cheapest way all the way around.
Yeah.
So I'm right, and Rob is also right.
I just want to mention one last thing, which is if cost is no object and you want to hear something that will blow your mind, there is the Smith Realizer. That's spelled Smyth. They're at smith-research.com. They have their Smith Realizer, which is a crazy system where you actually take two little microphones that are shaped like earplugs and put them into your own ears. Then you listen to some test tones that are produced by the Smith Realizer, and you play those test tones through your speaker system or someone else's speaker system. I mean, if you have access to a professional dubbing stage, take it there and record the test tones. And what the Smith Realizer does is it uses all of its processing to create a head-related transfer function, your head-related transfer function, so that you can have binaural recordings. Everything gets turned into a binaural recording. And what you get is a very convincing sense that you are listening to a speaker system, not headphones. It gets it out of your head. They even give you a head tracker that sits on top of your headphones with a little sensor that sits in a stationary position so that when you turn your head, the front speakers remain like virtually at the front of the room rather than turning with your head. So, I mean, they call it a realizer or a virtualizer because it is recreating the sense that you're listening to external speakers. It's amazing. It's also very expensive. It's $4,500 or something like that.
$3,500. That sounds
45, I think.
45. It still sounds like it should cost more than that. Honestly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's almost within reach.
All right, Jim. Heard us talking about speaker wire gauge and length and how the resistance of the wire is really the most important factor. Jim would like to know, say you had a 30-foot 16 gauge wire and a 30-foot 12 gauge wire. Could the difference between them in resistance be measured? Well, that's
yes,
always measured.
Yes,
always measured. That is true. What about sonically? Could the difference in, say, high frequency roll off be shown on the graph? 30 feet?
30 feet. I mean, if what you're doing is playing a sweep or pink noise through actual speakers, which are connected to these two different gauges of speaker wire, and you were to graph that, I mean, at some point, at some frequency, yes. I mean, but it's going to be way up in the ultrasonic frequencies. So, strictly speaking, yes, but...
Technically, but okay, you kept asking about measuring or graphs, but
right.
The real question is, or sonically, could I hear it?
Right.
And the answer is no. It would probably
not at
be
that.
Fine.
Not at that. Not at a 30-foot length.
Not at 30 foot. You gotta have a lot more distance.
I mean, at some point, if you have say,
honestly, I would still run 12 gauge. I never run less than 12. 14. I never run less than 14 gauge unless. Mm-hmm. The only reason I would is because that's the only thing I had available to me, and then I would run.
Sure.
So.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you get your speaker wire from Monoprice or Parts Express, it's not like it's expensive. Yeah. So there's not much reason to go less than 14 gauge in pretty much any situation. But yeah, I mean, eventually, if you get like 100-foot length, even from 16 to 12 gauge, it's possible. It's possible you can hear a difference. It'd be really hard because it's going to be way up in the high frequencies. And
considering the only place you're going to run that big old speaker wire is to the back of your room,
yeah,
chances are it's going to be going to your surrounds where you're not doing that. I mean,
maybe you got a mansion and you put all of your amplifiers in one closet in the basement and you have 3 floors and it's 250 feet away or something.
If you have a mansion, are you really saving that much money on speaker wire? Is that what's making or breaking your budget here? I don't know.
But yes, the differences are real. They could be measured, but you'll probably never hear them.
Yes.
That's that.
Scott 2.0. I guess we have 2 of these Scotts. We have 2 Scott S's now.
We have 2 S's now.
All right. Anyway, Scott 2.0 has been listening to the AV Rant, to our podcast ever since the very first AV After Dark podcast. Hey, some good came out of that.
Yep.
That was back in the Dina days. Listening to AV Rant led to a SVS PV1000 purchase. Yay. Scott and his wife are moving to a new house in August. There won't be space for a dedicated theater, boo, which means you bought the wrong house. Which it is. You worry about home theater, where you're going to sleep, anything else your wife cares about. Scott and his wife are moving to a there won't be space. Oh, I already said that. So, which means that Scott's surround setup needs to go into the living room.
Okay.
That's fine. People do that all the time. It's fine. The front wall has a fireplace. Scott's going to put his TV over that fireplace. Okay. Before we go on from here, I will try to remember to post these pictures to Facebook or something. I went to Clint's house and he has got this mount, and I don't know how much it costs. It's not cheap,
Okay.
but it is from one person makes it. One
Hmm.
person. I'm not sure who it is. He didn't give me the name. I'll have to get all the information about it. But basically, you mount it over your, when it's for over these fireplace situations. So
Yep.
you put it, you mount your thing, and there's these two little things on there that two little things like little ears at the very bottom of the TV. So there's
Okay.
like six around the bottom, and you grab it, you pull it forward, and the TV comes forward and down.
Right. Articulates down.
But it
Yeah.
articulates down, which is
Yeah.
something I hadn't seen before. Like they articulate side to side, and they
Oh
rotate
yes.
and shift and they angle, but this
Yep.
thing completely comes down. And they have these special
Ah.
little paintable things that you put over the mount so that when it comes down, it's all doesn't look quite as bad as it possibly could. So
Okay.
that is something maybe to look into. I'll try to get some information about that. I didn't think about it until just when I wrote this question. Scott's going to put his TV over the fireplace. He's already reassured us that he's fine with that placement and likes it, so not to worry. I'm not worried. There are windows
Yeah,
on.
we're not the ones pounding our fists saying never put a TV over a fireplace. Like I am okay with a TV over a fireplace.
Clint's got a TV over a fireplace.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
he didn't have this mount until recently because last time I was there, he didn't have it. It just sat up there.
Nope.
So, it's kind of cool though because it comes down to where like you don't have to cock your neck up to look at.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
There are windows on either side of the fireplace, and there's not much wall space after those windows, honestly.
Not much. No.
Yeah. And there's a sliding glass door on the right wall. There's a door on the left wall, and there's a stairway leading downstairs at the back of the living room. Downstairs, I guess that's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a door at the bottom of those stairs. Okay, so there's no door at the top. The right rear corner of the living room has a permanent opening with no door that leads to the kitchen and dining area. The living room is 14 feet by 18 feet, and the dining room is 23 by 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all the stats.
Specifics. Thank you.
And he sent us a picture and a floor plan. It's all good stuff.
Scott's concerned about how he positioned the speakers. Says the aesthetics committee would prefer not to see any speakers at all.
Yeah.
Damn you. But attractive subtle speakers are okay, as are some slim on walls or speakers that blended decor. Towers and boxy speakers are a no-go.
Right.
So, if he chooses on wall, should he just mount them directly to either side of the TV, or should he put them far apart on the outsides of the two windows? That would basically put them in the corners.
It would.
I
Yeah.
am
And
not a
the
fan of
windows are not like right against the fireplace. There is some wall space. So there's the fireplace, and to the left and the right of the fireplace there's some wall space, and then to the left and the right of that space are the two windows and then the two corners. So I mean, you're not going to have a wide spread between the left and right speakers, but at the same time, you don't want them tremendously far away from the edges of your screen, because if what you're mostly doing is watching TV and movies, if sounds pan left to right, you don't want the sound to seemingly go way over to the corner of the room when it just left the edge of your screen. There's a disconnect there. So yeah, I've got just looking at the picture, I've got no real problem with him putting the two speakers next to the windows on the inside edges of the windows, so they're between the fireplace and the window. I think that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the putting them right there. And honestly, based on the picture I saw, it looked like there was actually still some space, like on the mantle to either side of the TV. Depending on what size TV he gets, he might just be able to put them on that mantle.
Yeah, I don't know if that's his TV, to be honest. I think he has a 55-inch right now, and he said he wants to get maybe a slightly larger one.
Oh, okay. Well, the other option, too, you can consider is the ones that mount to the sides of the TV.
Yeah, but then they're even closer. So.
That's true, but that's why if his TV is so big that it's almost up to those windows anyways, he might as well. At that point, it would be, you would know that at least the TV, if he hit some sort of articulated mount, at least the speakers are going to stay relatively in the right position. If he moves it in some way, like if he, whatever, if he aims it down, or if he gets the one I was just talking about. So might be, and some of those are pretty good. Trying to think of some of the brands I've heard, but some of those are pretty all right. You have to shop around for those. B, where should he put his surround speakers? I have to go look at the picture, but
Yeah, no, he gave us a floor plan, and I'm looking at it, and it looks as though if he over on his left wall, there is what appears to be a window, and then behind that window is a door. But in between that window and door is some wall space, which looks like it would be more or less directly to the side of where his sofa is going to go. And then over on the right wall, there's the sliding glass door, but behind, towards the back of the living room of that sliding glass door, there's a wall. So to me, it looks
yeah,
like he's got those two spaces. Like, even if they're slightly forward of the sofa, that's not the biggest problem. You can just angle the speakers back a little bit if they're mounted on the wall. So that's
it depends on where he's
what I
sitting
would
too.
put them.
Because I mean, if depending on how tall that door is, he might be able to put one above that door. It's gonna be a little bit too
Ah,
high, but he
yeah.
could put it to the other side just as high, and it's fine.
Yep,
It's not gonna be that high. A door is not that high in comparison to where you're sitting.
that's
It's
right.
higher than you want, but it's not. It's not. It's not on the ceiling.
And when
It's
we
not
start
that.
talking about the potential choices for on-wall speakers, all of them are slim and could fit easily within that space that is above a doorway
Yeah.
to the ceiling. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
good call.
Let me go see. Should he mount surround back speakers on the section of the wall above the stairway? Would they be worth it? I don't think so. Honestly,
Ah,
I doubt it. I don't think so. It's not that big of a room, dude, and most of
it's
it's
not. Yeah.
stairway.
Now he does have enough space behind where his sofa will be that I would say there's no reason to avoid surround back speakers, because in some cases I say don't put surround back speakers because you're so close to that rear wall it will actually make the sound worse, not better.
Yeah.
But that's not the case here. So if he were to put surround back speakers there on that back wall, I'd say that's all right. If you're going to expand to immersive audio, Dolby Atmos and DTS X, I would say get some surround back speakers, because as THX has said, and as I've found as well, having those surround back speakers matters more in immersive audio than, frankly, the front heights or anything other than the top middles that are directly above you. So yeah, that would be my answer there. I wouldn't say like hurry out then get them, but if you're thinking you'll expand in the future, then yeah, they'd be worthwhile then.
Yeah. I don't know.
Tom's not a big fan of
I'm not a
surround
big fan of
backs.
surround back speakers, honestly. So maybe listen to Rob, not me. They're opening a space below the TV and above the fireplace mantle. Should he just use a phantom center? Um, well, it depends on what you're gonna. If that TV is gonna have to be on some sort of mount, an articulated mount.
Yeah.
I kind of want to say yes. To be honest with you, I kind of want to say yes, but I think maybe I don't know. If you can fit one down there, it probably will help quite a bit. Like I think you can
Yeah.
probably get away with it. But I think the fact that your soundstage, your imaging is going to be pretty tight, that
Hmm.
getting the vocals locked into your TV might be worth it. It might be worth it to do that.
Yeah, and there are like if you're gonna have a wall mount, there are little brackets that can just come down just below your TV or just above your TV, that actually fix onto the wall bracket, or they actually just go right up against the back of your TV, and then the wall bracket goes over top of
Yeah.
these brackets, and then you can mount a thin on wall style center speaker onto that bracket, so then it goes with your TV, so that way if
Right.
you move your TV in any given direction, the center speaker comes along with it. That would probably be a decent idea, especially if you're actually going to end up using like Tom's articulated come down mount, because that would allow you to bring the center speaker with the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think putting them near or on that mantle place or right,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit to the outside or whatever is probably where you want to be anyways, as far as your main speaker.
Now,
Uh,
I had one last thought before we get into speaker recommendations, which is that the front left and right speakers, if they are going to be on walls, it's going to be tempting, strictly from a looks point of view, to have them so that they're like even with the TV. So the TV is going to be pretty high up because it's above the fireplace, and then it would be tempting to have your left and right speakers so that they're even horizontally
yeah.
with the TV. But that's going to put their tweeters up pretty darn high.
Yeah.
Now, if you get ones that can be like angled downward, that would be okay. But if there's any way to make it look reasonable and actually have the tweeters closer to ear level, that would be preferable
Just
from a
remember, the
sound point
vocals
of
are
view.
going to be coming out of the center channel, which
Yeah.
you could leave with your, mount to your TV.
Yeah.
Whereas the left and right panning, you're going to want that near where you are.
Yeah.
Makes a
Yeah.
lot
You
more
still
sense.
want those tweeters at ear level if you can manage it
Yeah.
for your front three.
He's also heard us mention Golden Ear, Supersat, On Walls, and Kef's T series. Are those his best options?
They're both good options.
I don't see anything wrong with those options. I'm a fan of those options, but she wants something super duper flat and all that. We've talked about flat
Well,
speakers quite
not
a bit.
necessarily, just like something that looks like it fits in the room
I
seems to
don't
be
know
the
what his room
requirement.
looks like. I mean, maybe it's all dead babies in there. Who knows? I don't
I
know.
I highly doubt that, Tom.
Well, I don't think
I will I will
I don't
mention
judge.
I will mention Revels on wall speakers. They don't look tremendously different from the Golden Ear Supersats, but they're skinnier. Like for the left and right ones, they're a little skinnier from left to
Mhm.
right, or the center is not quite as tall. It is the skinniest of them. I would mention like the Kef T series. Those ones, I think you might have a bit of a problem fitting the center speaker below the TV because they're actually kind of wide, or in the case of the
Right.
center speaker, kind of tall because they're very, very flat. But then they have to have some sort of radiating surface area. So I would probably think it's going to end up being between the Golden Ear Supersats and the Revel on wall speakers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you need to do is take your wife speaker shopping and then get
Mm-hmm.
back to us and say, "What
I
about this? What about this? What about that? That sort of thing."
I suspect you'll be a fan of the Golden Ear Supersats because this is not like an ideal acoustic space. And as I mentioned before, the Golden Ear Supersats, they contend really well with sounding very clear and keeping the dialogue very intelligible in less than ideal acoustic spaces. And that's the situation you got here. And they're certainly like attractive and slim and all that. So I'd put them as a front runner.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, his biggest concern is how to handle the subwoofer placement. That's always the biggest concern.
Yeah.
He has, because she don't want to see speakers, she sure doesn't want to see subwoofers, especially two. He has a single PB1000. Ooh, you went with the big one. Right now, should he get a second one? If so, where should he position the two of them? Or with his room size, should he replace his PB1000 with something else? Or it's not just your room size; it's your entire area size.
Yes.
So that's something to be considered.
Which, with that opening to the kitchen and dining room, is a little over 5,000 cubic feet.
Yeah,
It's bigger than you might think.
yeah.
But I kind of suspect this isn't going to be a setup where you're actually trying to pressurize that entire space and blur your vision with 20 hertz bass.
That's not true.
Well, I mean that's the ideal, but I kind of think that might be shooting a little beyond what will get used on a regular basis.
I don't have to use it on a regular basis. I just have to use it every once in a while. Press refresh.
Oh man.
So
Well,
yeah, how much space do you want, dude? Let's
yeah.
answer that question, because if you're really looking to pressurize that entire space and get some really good bass as often as you can, yeah, you might want to bump up to the 2000s. I think that would probably be good.
And
As
there's
far
the
as
cylinders. There's the PC 2000s, which take up less floor space, as
that
we've
is
mentioned.
true. And you can lie them down. We've got that from
That's
the
right.
first now. Personally, I'm looking at your room, and it's hard to envision like exactly where you could put these subs, but really, I would think that on either side of your couch wouldn't necessarily
Yep.
be a bad placement. Now, the problem I'm worried about is being able to walk through your room
Yeah.
with two subs and a couch going across 14 feet,
Yep.
because that's going to be tight. So if you can't do that, front right, left back, maybe. I mean, but there's a stairway or something. I can't figure out what's back there.
Yeah, there is a stairway at the back
It
of the
looks like
room.
there's an area in the corner there. Maybe can kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm sort of looking at, well, where are your standing waves going to be? What standing wave could you potentially fix with two subs? And it's really going to be the standing wave that's going from left to right across your room. So across that 14-foot width of the living room, that's where you're going to have a standing wave for sure, bouncing back and forth between your left and right walls. So if at all possible, if you can get have two subwoofers and have one on your left wall, one on your right wall, as close to the middle of that 18-foot length as you can. I mean, that's as far as the acoustics goes, the ideal placement. But yeah, that's most likely going to have them right beside your couch, and we don't know how much of a walkway that's going to leave you.
Especially in the you can't get it in mid wall anyways because the stupid sliding glass door is there.
Well, it could be
So
behind the sliding glass door and in between that window and door on the left wall.
yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah, or under the window.
under the window maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
If
and
that works, that's
if
where I'd
not,
go.
you could actually mirror them on those two walls, but keep
Mm-hmm.
one back and one forward, or vice
Yep.
versa. But that gets you pretty close to being in opposing corners, anyways.
Yep.
So
But yeah, if you basically just keep them across the room from each other as much as you can and realize that it's going to be that side to side standing wave that will be dominant in this room since there's an opening at the back. Yeah, that's the way to approach your two subs. I would recommend if you can manage it, if your wife's okay with having another big box in the room there. Yes, two subs, all 4 subs if you can. Go for it. Just fill the whole room with subs.
that is probably the best advice I've ever heard on this podcast.
I mean, who needs an 8-foot ceiling height? I mean, a 6-foot ceiling height is fine. You just walk on top of a floor of subwoofers.
That's a fantastic idea. If you really want to put the fear of God in people, don't put them on the floor. Just hang them all from the ceiling. Just like
Yes.
it's ceiling mounted subs and dead baby art all the way around. I don't know why I'm stuck on that right now.
Yeah.
I need to switch.
It was a heavily reinforced hanging ceiling. You know, it's a drop ceiling. You got the grid
ceiling.
there, but instead of 2-foot by 2-foot tiles, it's 2-foot by 2-foot subwoofers in every square. There you go. We just solved it.
We did. And my mail program just crashed, so I can't read the next question.
Alrighty,
So
well,
read the next question.
I will carry on. This is from Aaron T on Google Plus. We actually found his message over there. Good thing he wrote to us like during last week's podcast because I might not have noticed it otherwise. But he has a set of Tecton. They're Seas Pendragon towers. They normally sell for $2,500 a pair. They're on sale right now for $2,000 a pair. These use triple ring radiator tweeters with 2 8-inch drivers above and below that stack of triple tweeters, and they are 95 dB per watt per meter efficient. They are high efficiency, and they can absorb a heck of a lot of
power
power.
into those things, like a watt.
Yeah,
Maybe 2.
like 0.1 of a watt.
And for his surrounds, he's got a pair of the Tecton Mini Lore bookshelf speakers, which I believe have a single tweeter, which is mounted below a woofer.
An 8-inch woofer. Yeah, the same 8-inch woofer.
And he's also purchased a wired for sound MC7150 Class D amplifier based on its 150 watts per channel rating. But now he's concerned because the amp specs say their minimum impedance load is 4 ohms, and the Seas Pendragon say they have an average impedance of 4 ohms, which suggests that they dip below that at least half the time. But more than that, when all 7 channels of the MC7150 are driven full range, 20 to 20, simultaneously with 1% signal to noise ratio,
Total harmonic distortion plus noise.
Distortion plus noise. Only 65 watts is available for each of these 7 channels. Okay, first of all, I looked at the specs of that thing. Where is he getting that 65 watts into 4 ohms at?
Well,
I'm only seeing ratings into 8 ohms.
Yeah.
And they're way higher than that. And 4 ohms, it should be double or somewhere near double what it is at 8 ohms.
well, that must be coming from a review or some such. I mean, the thing is, the math actually does work out because in all the instances of the specs, they're showing either 1 channel driven or 2 channels driven, and you basically have somewhere in the range of 365 watts or so to work with.
Yeah, for the
You know, so that can be pumped all into 1 channel, or it can be divided among any number of the 7 channels available. But it seems like that's basically the amount that's there to work with. You know, so some give and take above and below that. So this whole thing of if you're driving all 7 channels simultaneously, exactly equally as loud, you only get 65 watts per channel.
Let's just remember all the times we've heard all 7 channels driven equally loud at full power for any length of time. Let me think if I can remember all the times that has happened in my life. Trying to remember one.
Well, you could set up a test tone to make that happen. That is about the only way.
That's the way it happens, yeah. Anyways, he feels as though he might have been misled in regards to the amp's capabilities, and he's wondering if it would be enough power for his speakers. Let me see if I got this right. I bought some of the most efficient speakers I can buy, and I got an amp for them. Not just I didn't just plug them into a clock radio like I could have. I plugged them into an actual amp, and now I'm worried whether or not I'll have enough power.
Yeah.
You're gonna have enough power, Aaron.
Yeah, we need to think about 95 decibels comes out of these speakers if you put 1 watt of power into them. So let's say you're sitting 12 feet away from them. Or heck, let's go further. It's 18 feet away from them, right?
You're actually in your kitchen. You're not even in the same room. You're in your kitchen with your wife, and she's going to hear a difference anytime now. So keep going. Yes.
But at that point, you've dropped, because you're in a room, because you're not in an anechoic chamber, where, yes, in an anechoic chamber, every time you double your distance away from the speaker, you lose 6 dB of output. But in an actual room where, even if you've acoustically treated, there's still some sound reinforcement reaching your ears, you only drop 3 to 4 dB every time you double your distance away. So let's say you're 4 meters away from these speakers instead of 1. You've only dropped 8 dB at the most. 1 watt is still giving you 87 decibels of output. You're still above reference volume level using 1 watt of power. And that's assuming all 5 or 7 of the speakers are playing simultaneously at that volume, which is very loud. You're using a grand total of 7 watts at that point.
7.
And if you want to get all the way up to those 105 dB peaks, you only need to multiply that by 10 once. That gets you to 97 decibels already. Oh no, 70 watts grand total, all 7 speakers hitting 97 dB simultaneously. And then, okay, you could multiply that by 10 again to get you to 107 dB, but you don't need to get that high. You know, you can double it once, double it twice. I mean, you have enough power. That is not the concern. You've got very efficient speakers. You are never driving all of the speakers simultaneously to peak loudness all at once. That's not the concern here. My bigger concern would be, what's the noise floor on this amp? Because I have no idea. Its signal to noise ratio is not particularly impressive. And a lot of Class D amps don't have a fantastic noise floor. That would be my bigger concern. And this is a real concern in this case, because it's not just me being ridiculous and anal about noise floor. When you have really efficient speakers, any noise floor comes hissing through those speakers very noticeably.
Yeah, I agree. You don't need another amp for the power.
No.
That's the next part of his question, is he's thinking about a different amp because he needs
like an additional amp to the one he already has.
He's going to run them in line. No, he's not. I would worry about 2 things. I would worry about the noise floor, because with really, like Rob said, with really efficient speakers, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear any of that noise floor very, very quickly. The other thing I would worry about a little bit is seeing their impedance graph on these speakers. Now, I couldn't find it on their website. I'm sure it's someplace. But seeing how low they dip, because because Class D amps generally don't really handle those wild fluctuations really super well. I'm not a huge fan, just in general, of Class D amplification. It can be done really well.
Yeah, I mean, if it's done really well,
but
then they're expensive.
I think that most of the cheaper Class D is all just the Bang & Olufsen stuff that has been, sort of tinkered with by somebody and said it's ours. And I think Bang & Olufsen can make it sound really, exactly the way they want, and the rest of you guys who are messing with it can't necessarily do that. The only time I've ever heard a difference between amps is when I've heard a Bang & Olufsen module versus another amp. And I've been like, there is a difference here. I am hearing it. And it's really bizarre to hear that. And I think it's because the Class D was not implemented particularly linearly. And that's the problem with Class D. And that's why they generally are used for subwoofers, because in those lower ranges, they are very linear. It's very easy to do that. Whereas over the full range, they run into problems. It's much, much harder. So I would be concerned about those 2 things.
But all of that said, we're not super familiar with this particular wired for sound amplifier. No. So I'm not saying you must return this. Like, try it out, because I mean, they must have a return period. So I mean, you will know right away. You will connect one speaker to it, turn it on. You don't even have to have the amplifier connected to anything. Just plug it in, turn it on, connect one speaker, and see if that thing hisses like crazy at you. Because if it does, which would not shock me if it did. Then you know, oh, I have an unreasonably loud noise floor. If, on the other hand, you turn it on and there's barely a hiss or there's no hiss at all, then hey, you're in great shape and you do not have to worry about not having enough watts to drive your system.
Ear up to those tweeters and go, I think
Yeah.
I hear something.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
this is how I see dead people. This is sit at your chair, and if you can't hear anything, or if the only time you can hear anything is when you turn off the AC and you kick all the kids out of the house, and it's in the middle of the night, and there's no traffic anywhere, and there's no
And
sounds
you
of
and you hear a
bugs,
faint
you kind of maybe sort of hear something.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Because to get rid of that little bit is going to cost you a buttload of money.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if it's obvious, you can buy something else. If it's not
Yeah.
obvious, or if it's not something you really can hear, then don't worry about it.
If it is obvious, I have to say, I mention ATI all the time, but ATI is also the manufacturer for Outlaw. Outlaw has a 7-channel, 125 watts per channel model for $1,000. And when they say 125 watts per channel, that could be all of them driven simultaneously. Every single channel could be producing 125 watts into an 8 ohm load, all at the same time through that amplifier. And ATI's amps have very low noise floors, so I can easily recommend that. You don't need the 200 watt or 300 watt version because you got yourself some crazy efficient speakers.
So first of all, he was wondering if there's going to be enough power. We've already talked about that. But it seems as though he tends to drive the Tecton speakers full range, his mains full range, which of course you know that we do not agree with.
Right.
You should cross them over into a sub and let the subs do it, but we can't stop you, so do whatever you're going to do.
And it's still not a worry about not having enough watts. That's
that's
not a worry either way.
That doesn't change our recommendation in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
He's already thinking of getting a second amp from Emotiva, Outlaw, Parasound, or Anthem. ATI not on the list, except for the Outlaw.
Outlaw, yeah.
And he's also thinking he might just get a 2-channel amp to drive only his front, left, right speakers. None of that's necessary.
Unnecessary.
Stop it. Stop it. I'm just trying to spend money. If you don't hear the hiss, be happy and know that
you're good to
getting
go.
all the power you need, and you're not going to run into anything, and it'll be fine. We now have Michael again. This is our 1.0 Michael, because our 2.0 Michael didn't get
From
in
last
this
week.
All right. He laments the fact that there isn't a single option close to where he lives, and this is in Newfoundland, Canada. It's a Newfie. To rent Blu-ray discs.
I know your pain, Michael.
True?
Yep. I have
real?
one rental store. He's a completely independent guy who lives in a city across a bridge from me. That is my one option for renting discs at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sad up here, man.
Anyways, he and his wife resorted to ordering a movie via his local cable company's on-demand service. It was all he could do to make it through the movie due to the poor sound quality, which is very important since Michael is visually impaired. Michael would like to know if there's any online streaming or download rental options that offer DTS HDMA or true HD audio quality. Is there anything in the works?
No.
Well, yes, there is. That's the thing with the thing, right? The DTS or somebody was talking about it. We
There's
just talked about this.
There's nothing in the works for lossless audio, not in streaming. There's that one service, Vidity, which I have no idea if it will ever actually come to market. They're not talking rentals. They're talking allowing you to buy and download full, like it's as if you bought the disc. It just happens to be a download instead of a physical disc. That's their goal. They still haven't specified what they're doing on the audio side, though. I mean, since they're saying it will be the exact same video as what you would get on an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, I am hoping it will be the same audio as what you would get on an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc, but not necessarily. And we don't have Vudu up in Canada, which they're probably your best streaming and rental option right now.
You know what
at
you
least
need,
they're
dude?
giving you Dolby Digital Plus.
You need to get one of those IP services that allows you to pretend to be from the United
A
States.
VPN, yeah.
The VPN, so you can get this Voodoo and all this other stuff.
Virtual private network to
It's the only
spoof
time I really
your
approve
location.
of this sort of action is when there's literally
Yeah.
no options near you.
Yeah.
Now, and the second part of his question was, what about Google Play or iTunes rentals? Now, they're in Canada, so do they exist?
They exist. They're just the sound is still just standard Dolby Digital 5.1. Nothing beyond that. So yeah, no, I mean this is why I still get discs. you know, because I care so much about the audio quality, and there's no way to get lossless audio in a streaming or download format. I mean, this is where I say, like, what option are you really leaving people? This is kind of like, you shouldn't have to buy every movie you want to watch just to get the good audio quality. That's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, we end up in the situation where it's like, well, you can just buy whatever you want off of eBay and Amazon used. I mean, that's like, it ends up being kind of the only option. It is a pickle, but I don't have anything to tell Michael. I'm in the same boat. If there's at the instant there's something, I'll let you know because I'm on the lookout for it too.
Yeah. It's almost like you want to say BitTorrent, but I just can't.
Well, I know.
Yeah. It's just, it's terrible. That's a terrible. I felt that sort of the same when I was in Australia. There was no real good options. There was one cable channel, and they controlled both normal cable and satellite,
Mm-hmm.
and it was ridiculously expensive. And you had, even if you wanted to get it, you would have to have them wire, come to your house. Like nobody's house was pre-wired for this stuff, so you had to pay to have them wire it to your house. And then the monthly charges were outrageous.
Yeah.
And there was only over-the-air TV, which was nice, but there was only like, when I got there was only like 5 channels or something.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up, by the time I left, they were really expanding channels, so they probably had near a dozen by the time I left. So that was much better, but there still wasn't any on demand. There wasn't any of that. And Netflix had just come to Australia right when I left.
Yeah.
So streaming. So he didn't mention Netflix streaming. I guess he doesn't consider that one good enough. Is that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty darn sure Michael has Netflix. I mean, you know, that is, it's kind of our only streaming option. I mean, we have Xbox Video or whatever the heck they're calling it now. I mean, that's sort of one other service, but yeah, it's slim pickings, man. It really is. I'm hoping we get Voodoo one day. We have Walmarts in Canada. Come on.
Yeah, Walmart's in Australia too. They were weird. They weren't like normal Walmarts. They were more like a Target or a, not even like a Target. Like it was really weird. Like they didn't have any food in them at all.
Well,
yeah.
let's hope Kaleidoscape comes down to affordable prices, or Avidity actually does what they say they're going to do.
The only thing I could say is like, dude, how do you feel about spending, 10 grand on a streaming player thingy from Kaleidoscape, and you can buy the movies. I think, can you rent them through there too, or just buy them? It's just buying them, right?
Which one? Kaleidoscape?
Yeah.
I think it's buy only. I think it is. Yeah.
Jim on Facebook is going to build a theater in his attic. The space is 10 foot by 10 foot and 12 feet high at its peak. This room is ridiculously small. It took me a while to kind of wrap my head around, because I was like, why is he taking pictures of his closet? 10 by 10 and 12 feet high at its peak, although the ceiling will slope sharply along the roof line. If you think about, so you think about your attic, right, where the roof comes together in like that A-frame like thing.
Yep.
Now he's building it like to the left, slightly past the apex, and then all the way to the ceiling.
Yeah.
First of all, wow, that's going to be interesting acoustically.
This is going to be a one-man theater. That is for darn sure.
That is one chair, so you only need one sub, but you have to be able to place it. You might have to sit on it. Jim has an assortment of speakers and gear that he's purchased secondhand or made himself. He has 4 MTX 8-inch speakers that he could put in the ceiling. What? He doesn't have that much ceiling. That would literally be all of it. Literally all of the ceiling would be speakers. It wouldn't even have any drywall up there. It would just be speakers.
Really not true, but it is a lot of...
Awfully close. It is awfully close. He's got some polk towers. First of all, where is he sitting? Is he facing the slanted wall?
No, I believe the slanted wall is at his back, and he is facing the lone flat square wall, which will go all the way up to that 12-foot peak.
He is literally going to be sitting in like the worst place for bass in his entire little room. Literally the worst place for bass. You're going to need 2 subs. All right, going back. Some polk towers and bookshelf speakers, and some Sherwin Vega L7 bookshelf speakers. 2 DIY subwoofers using Rockford Fosgate Punch P3D4 drivers,
which I believe are car audio drivers. I think, yeah.
And an NEC and NP500 projector, which is nice because it's a short throw projector, which will be doing exactly that.
It's a 1280 by 800 resolution projector.
No, so it's business class,
It's a
basically.
business class. It's bright,
No,
which you're not going to need.
yeah. Jim would like to know our suggestions for speaker placement. Considering the number of speakers you have everywhere, just put them everywhere. Just,
I mean, he
just.
mentioned putting four 8-inch speakers into the ceiling, which makes me think he's got an eye on immersive audio, on Atmos or something like
I
that.
think that's got to be, yeah.
I would imagine, but the thing is, he's got this slant. I mean, it's a steep slant too.
Yeah,
This is not a low pitched roof. This is a steeply slanted roof
40
line.
degrees maybe. It looks the 30 to 40 degrees. I mean, it's big.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking if he wants to do immersive audio, what he could do is, I mean, he's only got 10 feet to work with here. That's from the front to the back, and you can't really use the back few feet of that because the ceiling line is so low.
Yeah.
So there's well, to use top going to be a limit to how far back you can put the seat because you're a certain height and you don't want your head crashing into that slanted ceiling. I don't know how close to that wall he's going to be. I think he mentioned, because it was a little bit confusing in what he wrote, but I think he mentioned he's planning to be about 6 feet from eyes to that front wall, with hopefully about 4 feet behind him, which frankly, looking at it, looks about right, just eyeballing it.
But
Right?
that means his chair is going to be almost as far back as it can be.
Yeah, pretty much.
So behind him is basically right behind his head is going to be the slant of that wall.
Yeah.
Within a foot or two, and then behind the chair, it's really just the lower than the chair. It's just going to continue to get lower. So
Yeah.
the first thing I would do acoustically is that useless area at the bottom down there, that entire floor space, I would just like put those corner traps in there.
Just stuff it. Exactly.
Just stuff it from
Yup.
one side to the other, the entire thing.
I mean, I would say to try and have some absorption on that slanted ceiling, but where is it physically going to fit? I mean, even if it's 2 inches thick, that's 2 inches you don't have to spare in this room.
You put 2 inches on that wall, and you'll have to move forward a foot, and you're going to be sitting 5 feet from.
But you got to get something on there because the reflection off of that, because I mean, his head is going to be basically right against that slanted ceiling behind him. So you got to put something there because that's just going to be crazy. I mean, even if it's, I guess, a 1 inch thick or something, you got to put something there. Otherwise, the dialogue is just going to be unintelligible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do, man. It's
Good luck with that.
yeah, it's got to be done.
Audio goes, I don't see you putting more than one set of speakers on your ceiling, and I think that'll be just fine. Just center your middle.
Yeah, your top middles.
Top middle,
I mean, there's nowhere to put surround backs in here.
No.
I mean, you could use the in ceiling. I mean, physically, you could use the in ceilings and have them somewhere behind you on that slanted ceiling, but they'd be firing straight into either your head or the back of your chair, and kind of being useless back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
The way I think of surround back speakers always being.
You could do some top middles. I'll give you that.
Top middles, surrounds, and your front three.
Yeah, because the surrounds can definitely go directly to either side of his one seat, I imagine, is all that's going to be in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, as far as speaker placement goes, I mean, I would just focus on getting the 5, because you can have your 2 speakers up front. You got a big wall in front of you. It's 12 feet high. So you can have your 2 speakers up front. You can have your center channel. I didn't mention a center channel, so I don't know if he actually has one, or you can repurpose one of those bookshelf speakers to be your center.
Got tons of them.
So you can have those 3 up front in their normal positions. You can have 2 speakers to either side. You could, if you have enough pull bookshelves, you can use those, or you could use your Sherwin Vegas. And I wouldn't worry about the rest. If you want to do top middles with using one pair of those MTX 8 inches, then go for that. But that's it.
Yeah. Jim would like to know our suggestion for speaker placement. I already said that, and he also like to know what we didn't say about subs. I would imagine you were going to go 2 sidewalls, I guess.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
All you can do. That's pretty much what you got. So,
yeah.
In fact, just have them flank your couch.
Exactly.
Put them on either side of your couch.
They will be your side tables to put your beer on.
There you go. Put a little doily down.
And quite possibly shake as they do so.
Hopefully, get the right ones. You can get the PB 1000s or the SB 1000s, or if they made a smaller one, you could get that one too. All right. He'd like to know which gaming system we think would be the best to include in the system.
Are you playing games on it? Because if you are, the games that are available decide which one. Because, I mean, as far as capabilities go, it's a wash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about an HTPC? You're sitting close enough to it. You might as well. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have not been super impressed with it. we can go off on a tangent here, and I don't want to, but I'm not really impressed with the AAA gaming's current direction, which seems to be
Hmm.
towards microtransactions
Hmm.
and downloadable content.
And
So
selling you half the game at the beginning and forcing you to buy the other half at the same price,
yeah, and that's really
essentially.
I to me right now, gaming like AAA gaming is in a downward spiral that's really, really negative,
Hmm.
and it's going to take a while for that to sort of for them to sort of come out of that because they're trying everything they can. And right now, people are still buying because they get excited by the hype and they buy it and they get pissed off. I know Rob and I can attest to that when we got excited about the hype for Evolve, right?
Well, that's not that game's fault. I have had no time to play it,
Well,
so
there's that, but I be honest with you, I that game is just not popular, and
it's true.
it's not, and I can clearly see why. You
Hmm.
know, it's not easy, and it's not much of a game. It's more of a mode for a normal game. It would be nice if there was like an actual game that went along with it. But you know, all they've got is like all this downloadable content for all the different skins you can buy. I'm like, I'm not buying skins.
Yeah.
Crazy. What do I look like? So that's the direction that we're seeing. I'm seeing AAA gaming going, and I'm not really impressed with it. So that means that really you have to think to yourself, you know, how am I going to be playing games in the future, and do I need to have them in my home theater? If you are a gamer already and you're really into the Call of Duty series or the Halo series or the whatever, well, then your decision is easy.
Yeah.
If you're not and you're just thinking, I would like to have a game system up here uh, for a casual gaming, bring your phone. That's what I
Well,
would say.
I will just say the Xbox One at the moment has more games announced, and they're going to have backwards compatibility with the available online Xbox 360 games. So just in terms of the number of games that will be available, the Xbox One is ahead right now. But if there are exclusives on the PlayStation 4 that you want, then yeah, that's it. So yeah, that one is not like intrinsically better than the other in any particular way. So it's the games that are available. He wanted to know screen size.
Oh, that's not on there.
It is. It's mentioned
Is
right
it
there.
not?
Second line. He would also like our suggestions on screen size. I'm reading verbatim from what I wrote. Yeah, if you are sitting that 6 feet from eyes
Oh,
to front wall, which, like I say, seems like the only physical possibility, even if you're going for quite a large field of view, say 40 inches or 40 degrees rather than a 30-degree field of view. I mean, a 40-degree field of view is nice for movies, particularly CinemaScope.
let me get
Six.
before you say it.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. Let me
Okay.
just kind of like in my mind put together what I think. I'm gonna say 72.
That would be too large. 60 inches
Really?
from 6 feet
Oh,
away.
6 feet away?
6 feet away.
I don't know.
Yeah.
How you feel about motion sickness? Because if you're gonna be playing these games, he's right. If he's right, if you're gonna be playing like first-person shooters,
Yeah.
if you're not gonna be playing first-person shooters and you lean your chair back a little bit and get an extra inch or so, yeah, 72, 72.
I don't know, man. You get to the point where it's unpleasantly large because you're having to turn your head to actually see the
Oh my
screen.
God, if you keep saying things like that, I'm gonna have to start making really inappropriate jokes. Don't ever say that again. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, a 60-inch screen from a projector, not exactly what we normally envision, but you're sitting 6 feet away from the wall. Like, that matters a lot.
You know, I'm sitting 8 feet away, and I have a 80 right now, and I find it perfectly reasonable. So that's why I thought 72. Anyways,
Yeah.
you and I have differences on how big it is.
I'm just going by the math. The math
You and your math.
the math does not
You gotta
lie.
feel it. It's an art. No,
It's a
it's not.
40-degree field of view with a 60-inch
Jason has been listening
diagonal.
since the day. Oh, wait a second. Did I already read this?
Nope,
No.
this is new.
Wow.
On
Another
to a
one.
new listener.
Has been listening since the days of Dina, but this is his first time writing in. Jason's theater is 12 feet by 17, but it has a cutout in the right rear corner that is 3 feet by 5 feet. It's actually a cut in.
Yeah, cut in. Yeah, yeah.
Cut
It is shrinking the volume of his room.
In the back, right rear corner by
Yeah.
3 feet by 5 feet.
It's like somebody took a square bite out of his room.
Yes. Jason would like to know where we think the two best positions are for his pair of SVS PB12 NSD subwoofers.
PC-12. They're the
PC12,
cylinders.
Sorry. And those are great subs. I can tell you that because I have.
He has them. They've been replaced by the PC-2000s. Doesn't diminish what the PC-12 NSDs can do one little bit.
No, it does
Good
not. They
subs.
are very good subs. Hold on a second. I'm waiting for the stupid image.
Okay, I have a thought on this,
He's
which
already got them placed on this on the image, and I
he
thought
does.
the
That's
placement was pretty good.
That's his proposal. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, he's gone for diagonal corners, front right corner, rear left corner, and so that bite out of his room is in the rear right corner. Yeah, that's gonna work pretty well. The only other thought I had was he's got in his diagram that he's gonna have a false wall for his projector screen, and all of his speakers and one of the subwoofers are going to be behind that false wall. He mentioned that his surround speakers are golden ear supersats. I don't know what his front speakers are. I don't know if they're full floor standing towers or if they're bookshelves or if they're on walls. I'm not sure. In the diagram, it kind of looks like maybe they're towers. But I had one thought, which was,
Who knows what they could be? They could be anything. Go on.
I know they're black squares in the diagram. So if there is room in some way, and remember, you can put those cylinder subs on their sides. If there's room to just have it in the middle of the front wall and the middle of the back wall, that will get rid of the front to back standing wave, which is going to be there. You're going to have that front to back standing wave, and you're going to have a side to side standing wave across two different ones because of the different dimensions of your room, because of that bite that's been taken out of the right rear corner. But if you had front middle, rear middle, that will work very well. So
now the question he's going to ask you: do you mean physical middle of the rear wall or the middle of the
no,
entire length?
I mean, if you took the front middle, so that's got the full width of the room, the full
Directly
12
across
feet,
for it, yes.
and then straight across from it.
So that would not be in the middle of the reduced size of the back of your back wall. Which
No.
is kind of, it looks like, it looks a little bit like your surround back speakers are cheated a little bit to one side because of, but maybe that's just the drawing.
I think it's just the drawing. It's not a super precise drawing.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
But it might not even be a physical possibility depending on what his center
what
speaker
his
is.
center is,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm okay with the where you have them placed right now. I would be perfectly fine with that.
That will be fine too.
He would also like to know if it makes sense to mount his golden ear superset surround speakers, considering the right surround speaker would end up in the corner created by that cutout at the back of his room. He would like to know if it makes sense to mount them as opposed
Well,
to
like where he's demonstrated where they are.
Makes sense where to mount them.
Yeah.
So basically, if you go left and right from where his three recliners are in the middle of his, probably back thirdish of his room, the right surround speaker is actually almost on the wall of that cutout. So that means that speaker when it plays, it's probably going to be some sort of, well, I don't know about the supersats, but it's meant to have a wide dispersion, which means it's going to immediately hit that left wall that's right next to it now, and bounce back. So I don't have any problems with you placing it there. You're going to have to put some absorption right there next to that speaker. But if you
That's just it.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah, because the way they've shown it, it appears as though his plan is to mount them on the side walls, not actually, on that cutout wall and facing forward or anything like that. They're going to be on the side walls. So really all you're worried about is the reflection that will be directly to the left of the surround speaker, which is created by having that wedge taken out of your room. So as long as you absorb there to get rid of that reflection, you'll be fine. And the supersats, like I've mentioned, they are actually more directional. They're not like super wide dispersion, so they will sound fine there. I don't have any problem with that.
Lastly, he's having a contractor soundproof the room. Interesting. And he will be talking with Gick Acoustics about room treatments, but is there anything else that we would recommend?
I think he's got a pretty good plan.
I don't see it. I think the reason that he's worried about this soundproofing is because most of his walls are concrete. So that's going to transfer sound pretty well through everything. So I don't know how he's going to soundproof it exactly, but
maybe they're just
out for you.
Adding second layer of drywall or something like that.
Something like that. Treat it a little bit. Because he is going to have a false wall for the projection screen as well. So he does have some pretty serious plans for this little space. So
really the only other thing I would mention is decouple everything. Make sure the subs are not in direct contact with the floor, that they have something. Well, no, the PC12 NSDs did not come with the decoupling feet. So
they did not.
Have something that is decoupling those. If those are tower front speakers behind that false wall, decouple that. Even think about when you build that false wall, have it like with sort of like rubber gasket around it so that if it does vibrate at all, that will be damped. Because it's kind of easy to make a flimsy false wall bend and shake just from the sound. So you want to make sure it's either very rigid and sturdy or damped. You pick one or the other. But yeah, that's about my only other real thought there.
All right, Scott has made great progress on building his dedicated theater room. This is a guy who's YouTubing the whole thing. He's got an airlock style entrance. I think this will go when you close
No,
it. That'd be cool.
no. But one door opens to reveal two more doors. There's a little room that you can enter. That's the little airlock room.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Airlock style entrance, but settled on using a hollow core door so that their looks would match the rest of the house. They will be replaced with solid core only if necessary. The ceiling is decoupled from the floor joist above using whispered clips and hat channels. And all openings in the ceiling for can lights and projector wiring have backer boxes within them. A dead vent brings cool air into the room with a flexible ducting acts as the air return, sorry. And the room is wired for two subwoofers, one in the front right corner, one in the left rear left corner.
See, he has listened to the guys at Soundproofing Company for sure, because that
Yes.
is all the construction techniques that are posted on their website. He's listened to us as far as the subwoofer placement goes, and we've repeated the things that Soundproofing Company says. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy with what he's done because he is doing this on somewhat of a budget. Like all the equipment that he's looking to get, he's not going for like the most expensive stuff. He's doing a lot of the work himself. So this is all about the money he's spending in exactly the right places to get the most return for everything that he spent. So I'm really, really pleased with what he's doing. It's very cool.
He's got 2 layers of drywall with green glue in between. That's already on the ceiling, and one layer of drywall is on the walls. The goal is to have the drywall finished and prepped this week so that Scott can paint on the weekend. Now he's going to miss his 6-week target, but only because his contractor is taking a week off for vacation.
So
Like that.
challenge met and failed. All right, we're both right and wrong.
All right, he says he'd be going with my advice. Sweet. And using a fixed frame 1.2 gain screen. If it doesn't work out, he'll try a sample of the Daylight High Power just to satisfy Rob. But you won't have to because mine is the best. Scott is now trying to nail down his choice of AV receiver. He had pre-wired for top middle speakers, but he is fine with waiting 2 or 3 years for the prices to come down and a number of titles to go up before expanding to Atmos and DTS X. Or more likely, you are fine with waiting until it just dies, and there are no stupid titles for it because it's stupid.
I don't think it's gonna die. But I would like more than one DTSX title. That is kind of a small number.
That is a very low bar, but thank you for setting it so low for them. Anyways, he's okay. He's considering that the Denon AVR X4000 for $600 from accessories for less, but the AVR X3000 is also available for only $400. He would use that extra $200 to build some DIY acoustic panels and bass straps. So what would you say is more important? The slightly more capable AV receiver or the acoustic treatments? Since you'll be using 7 speakers for the time being, it basically boils down to Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 without acoustic room treatments or Multi-Q XT with acoustic treatments.
Right. It's a very good question.
It's a very good question, and my answer is going to be specific just to you.
Okay.
I'm okay with the X3000 for you.
Okay.
This is because most people really need as much Odyssey as they can get because their rooms are generally craptacular. And that's not, I'm not saying that they're bad people or anything. I'm just saying that generally speaking, they've got so much stuff that they have to deal with to work around. You do not have this. You have a custom room that is absolutely, that you can lay out everywhere. You've got the subs placed in the right places and everything else. The stuff that Multi-Q XT32 can do, you will enjoy. But it's not going to be as dramatic a difference for you, I think, so that you can save some money on the with X3000. I think that the Multi-Q XT is going to be good enough for you, and that the acoustic treatments will make a nice difference as well. I think I would go with X3000.
Yeah, I concur. The acoustic treatments are going to provide the larger benefit than the gap between Multi-Q XT and Multi-Q XT32. Because if acoustic treatments weren't part of the equation, the difference between those two room correction programs is not going to be nearly as large as even if you had no room correction at all and you just added acoustic treatments. That is going to make the bigger difference in terms of what you will audibly hear in that room. So, yeah, given that he's going to be able to have good speaker placement. He's already attending to the bass by having dual subwoofers that are across the room from one another. Having the higher level of room correction is not the priority here. You'll get more benefit from the acoustic treatments. So I completely agree.
Lastly, as for Atmos and DTS X, he wants to see 9-channel 7.2.2 AV receivers widely available for under $1,000. For the sake of object-based audio in general, what do we think it will take for Atmos and DTS X to, quote, make it, unquote? I don't think they're going to make it anyway, so I mean, that's the wrong person here. I don't think they'll make it. They're going to make it. It's going to stick around for a while, and it's going to be like AirPlay. Everybody's got it, nobody uses it. You know? I mean, honestly, am I the only one that thinks that? Do you use AirPlay, like, on a regular basis? You have an iPhone.
No, I don't use it on a regular basis, no.
Okay.
No, can't say as I do.
Yeah, it was the #1 selling point in AV receivers 3 years ago.
That's true. Yeah.
It's just going to be one of those other things that'll be on the long list of crap they got in there that you're like, oh, yeah, it's there. And the object-based stuff is good. It's important. Yeah. But, yeah.
No, I think object-based audio mixing will continue. That will flourish, whether anyone is listening to it or not, because it's so easy to take an object-based mix and turn it into whatever you want. So there's no reason for them to not use object-based audio in the creation of the audio track. So that will flourish. I have no doubt about that. And as long as it does, I mean, now that the chips are widely available, and you can, if you're a AV receiver manufacturer or a TV manufacturer for that matter, you can buy one chip that now decodes Atmos and DTS X. I mean, just the same as you buy any AV receiver, it's gonna have standard Dolby Digital and DTS decoders. It's gonna have True HD and DTS HD MA decoders in it. It's just like table stakes at that point. And so I think we're going to have those decoders built in. Their object-based audio is going to be used. But, I mean, honestly, the vast majority of the market is still just using 2 speakers, the ones that are built in their TV. Like, that's most people still. Or they're getting a sound bar at the most. So in order for Atmos and DTS X to actually be a thing that, like, the general public is even remotely aware of, I think it'll have to be in sound bars or built directly into TVs. Like, and even then, they're not going to really care. Most people. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm hoping that, you know, the standard for Ultra HD over-the-air broadcast ATSC 3.0, I'm hoping it will be Dolby's AC4 codec, which would allow them to include Atmos in any television broadcast. I'm hoping that Ultra HD Blu-ray, and I'm really hoping that some download or streaming service will start to offer. I mean, Vudu has already said they're going to offer it. So, you know, it'll be there. I'm not worried that it's going to die just because of non-use. I mean, Dolby True HD barely gets used. Doesn't mean it went away. So...
No, I mean, it's just going to be one of those things. I just wonder how many actual mixes. And the complaints will be, you know, I got the Atmos speakers, and I got this new movie that has Atmos in it. I don't really even hear anything coming from overhead.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be.
That's what your Dolby Surround up mixer and DTS Neural X up mixer will be for.
Oh, and you know how I love the up.
In the meantime, don't hang your hat on Oro 3D. That's the only one I'm worried about.
James got his Dayton audio measurement microphones from Parts Express in a 2-channel mini DSP. He just wants to know if we have any particular ideas or tips and tricks on how to use them to set up his music room and theater. He's mostly interested in measuring his bass response. His initial plan is to start with the larger microphone in the primary listening position and use it to compare different subwoofer and speaker position combinations. He'd use the smaller mic to make comparisons, first to see how close the 2 mics are to one another, and then, assuming they're nearly identical, to take measurements at the other locations while the larger microphone stays put. Does that seem like a plan? It's obviously a plan. Your question is it a good plan? And Rob is about to tell you, because I am looking into this at all.
Sure. Well, honestly, when it comes to doing measurements, the trickiest part of it is that if you only ever measure at one position, that is a kind of dangerous thing to do, to be honest, because that's the sort of thing that leads people to try to EQ things to flatten out the graph that they're getting in that one measurement position, and not necessarily realizing how bad they might be making it at every other seat in the room. Now, I'm not worried that James is going to think that way, but since we're expanding this to hopefully more people are interested in this than just James, that's the danger of having one microphone and only using it in the primary spot. So the challenge with taking measurements of your room is that you really do need multiple microphone positions. But if you're going to do that, and the purpose is to compare one graph to another, you have to make sure that that mic is in exactly the same spot every time, particularly when you're looking for, like, what is the frequency response here? What is the delay response? You know, if you're looking at the waterfall graph to see how long your decay times and things like that are, those are very position dependent. So the trick of formulating a plan is that what you sort of need to do is put the mic in one position and then take every conceivable measurement you would like to have in that one position, then move the mic to a second position and repeat all of those measurements again. This is a real challenge when it's something like, what are my passive acoustic treatments doing in my room? Right, you know, the natural inclination would be, I'm going to measure my room without any of the passive treatments, and I'm going to move the mic to 3 or 5 different positions, and then I'm going to put up all the passive treatments, and then put the mic in those same 3 or 5 positions. Well, unless you have some kind, like, I don't know, I guess you could have 5 different mic stands and just leave them permanently up or something like that. But even then, you got to get, you know, you got to get the height of the microphone just right, and the angle, you know, so that it's pointing straight up again. So if you've only got the one mic, you kind of need to, like, measure the one position with all the acoustic treatments down, then put all the acoustic treatments up and do all the measurements again, then move the mic, take all the treatments down, put all the treatments up. Like, that's the workflow, which makes it a lot more work, but it's kind of what you need to do.
How I did it when I did the Oralex room Analyzer Pro or whatever it was. When I did that review, that's what I did. I'd take a measurement, then I'd take all my room treatments down and take the measurement, and I move the mic, and I would take the measurements, and I'd put all the room treatments. You see, I mean, so I would, you know, make two, you know, that way I would only have to move the mic and put the measure. I wouldn't have to put the acoustic treatments up more than absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
it's a real nightmare.
Yeah, it's a time suck is what it is, which is why, you know, like the crazy high-end systems like, you know, JBL's crazy high-end synthesis system where they bring in like 8 or 16 microphones, right? But then they just have 8 or 16 microphones. They set them up in those positions, and then they don't have to move any mics.
They don't move them again.
So, but, you know, his plan of having the one primary microphone and then hopefully the secondary mic, which he'll be attaching to his iPad, hopefully if those measurements are, you know, he can confirm that they're very close to one another. Now that gives him a second microphone that he can move around to the other positions,
right,
to do things. So as long as you're just doing it one at a time, and you know what you want, it's the same thing with every experiment. You want to eliminate all the variables down to just one. So you cannot have the position of the mic be a variable. That has to be static. So
yes. James. Oh, actually, James had a suggestion for the small room guy that we were just talking about. I just got an email from him. He said, have him spend his money on a really good screen and a really good set of headphones and a big shaker for his.
Yes, I know.
For his
yeah.
I actually thought about that. I'm like, if I had a room that small, I'd get a nice big screen, or however big it needed to be, projector screen, whatever. Get that thing set up, get a nice set of headphones, and that would be it. You know, that'd be.
But hey, I got a tiny room with 11 speakers stuffed in there and 2 big subs, so you know, it can work.
But I don't think he wants that. You know, he's got all these speakers. He wants to use them. So we're going to answer that question, not the question that maybe we think he should be asking. James also wanted to share a video introducing the Key. Is that what he went with?
I think it's Key, K-I-I.
It's K-I-I. Key 3 speakers, which use drivers on the sides and back to cancel out most of the sound in those directions, which will supposedly have sound only propagate forwards. Each pair requires 6 amplifier channels and 6 DACs with DSPs. So clearly they're very inexpensive. The idea is that you're eliminating as best you can through noise canceling. That's basically what it is.
Yep.
The side, the reflections off the side and reflections off the back, so you're only getting the forward stuff. Which I say, oh, I could do it a lot cheaper with room treatments. Yeah, that could.
Well, I mean, it won't
That,
be true cancellation. Room treatments won't be full
that's true.
cancellation. It's just a reduction. That's all it is.
But
So,
it's a kind of an odd thing to want to do, to be honest with you.
hmm.
I like the idea of it, but in actuality, I mean, you're now trying really, really hard to make a really beamy speaker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know how expensive. Did you ever get how expensive they were? I only got about
I
a third of the way through the
didn't.
video.
No.
I saw people on the YouTube channel were saying how much are they, so they must not have mentioned.
Yeah,
But they, not that people on YouTube have ever commented without watching the entire video. I mean, that's never happened. But
that would be safe.
yeah, they, I understand the idea. You're trying to take the room out of it, but it really doesn't, does it? It really doesn't take the room out of it. It takes this, those reflections off the side wall and the back wall that
Mm-hmm.
that are the immediate ones. It takes out of it. It doesn't take the reflections off the back of the wall. As it passes you and bounces back, it doesn't take any of those reflections out. If you're
Yeah.
sitting there listening in a glass cube, I don't really think it's going to make it sound that much better at all. You know, it's still
Well, I
going to
mean,
reflect around the room.
yeah. I mean, I guess it would allow you to. I mean, they even mentioned this in the video, like put the speakers right back in a corner or right up against the front wall. Like that type of thing. Which I mean, people do, right? I mean, lots of people have their speakers positioned like that.
Yeah, those people don't spend this much money on speakers.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
They do not have 6 channels of amplification, 6 stacks, and a DSP
Uh-huh.
for one speaker. They do not do that.
Yeah.
I don't-
Well, I mean, maybe Kingpin in that Daredevil series could benefit from this because it was shutter time every time I saw his nice B&W speakers set up in that room.
oh, jeez.
I was-
only
I was-
ever saw one.
Oh
Did
no,
you
he had 3 B&W speakers across the front and a little B&W subwoofer right next to his center channel.
Oh, how cute. Yeah.
And I kept waiting for his projection screen to come down because I'm like, he's got a center channel. He must maybe the Kingpin is a surround sound audio fan. Maybe maybe he's the one.
Nope. All right. So yeah, interesting speakers, not practical and sort of stupid. All right. Josh thinks we did a bad job describing what the BBE Sonic Maximizer does, and thinks we must have been talking about one of their older DBX3DX units, and that is not true. We were both talking about the BBE 462, which followed the link that we had posted. That's what would have gone to.
Yeah.
But that's since been replaced with the 482.
Okay.
Currently. But he wants us to use their description, which is 6 paragraphs. And I will read exactly 0 of those paragraphs. I am not reading this.
Well, how about the very first line though? Because I think that very first line is quite telling.
Loudspeakers have difficulty working with the electronic signal supplied by an amplifier.
Well, then we may as well just give up, shouldn't we?
I'm sorry. We tried. Amplifiers and loudspeakers, it's like dogs and cats. They've never been able to get along with each other. It's just not working. We should all have our own studio orchestra. You see, Josh, I'm not saying that their product, and I think we were pretty kind to that product when we talked about it. And
Yeah.
if you don't understand it, it's because it's crap like that clearly is not true. Loudspeakers have difficulty working with electronic signal supply. That is not true. That is
What have we been doing this whole time?
I'm not saying that they perfectly reproduce every sound, but that's not because of the electrical signal. That's because
Yeah.
there's imperfect materials, imperfect crossovers, imperfect designs. All right, all that stuff. But believe me, the electrical signal that's going to it and flipping the magnetic coil, magnetic field, so that the thing goes in and out, that's working just fine. that has got no problems whatsoever.
Remarkably, I have been able to recognize all kinds of sounds coming from my speaker being driven by an amplifier. I mean, they say it causes such major, that's their word, major phase and amplitude distortion. Really? Because that just has not borne out in any of my... I have been able to recognize people's voices. It's not them. It's a recording of them.
You mean there wasn't
played
actual
through the
people in your
speaker.
room? Inside your TV?
Yeah.
Speaking to you? Yes, okay.
So yeah, their whole explanation. The problem with it is that it is not technical It is not objective. It is some very flowery language describing all kinds of things. They created the problem and then created the solution to the problem that
We call
they
it
just
straw man
created.
argument, which is what every single high-end audio file type people do. They put up this thing where one of the major problems in cables is the electrostatic charge they pick up from
Ah, yes.
carpeting.
Right, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's just not so. It's just not so. All right, you can put your sock, you get your biggest, fattest wool socks that you have. All right, you can get it in an almost humidity-free room. You can put your foot down on the carpet and leave it there for 100 years. And when you pick it back up, the only charge it would have picked up was from the movement being put down and the movement being put back up. Sitting
Mm-hmm.
there literally cannot create a charge. Can't do
But
it.
the electrons, Tom, the electrons are moving through the wire.
Think of the
Surely.
electrons. Think of it. All right. They put up these arguments so that you will buy their products. I'm not saying that this product doesn't do something wonderful. You obviously have had great experiences with it. I got
Yes.
no problems with that. I have not experienced it, and the website makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. So I'm
Yeah,
having a hard problem swallowing everything they're saying.
Yeah, I was more interested in it because the thing was the review to which we linked for the
Yeah.
462 model. They were like they mentioned a little bit. I mean, it wasn't made explicit, but they're like, here's kind of what they say it does, but here's what it actually does. Like what it actually does isn't what they say it does.
That's
and yet
exactly right.
And yet the thing that it actually does is kind of useful and cool. So
I'm kind of okay with what it actually does, but this whole garbage, no.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Josh is correct in that their explanation is something we didn't talk about the last time we talked about this BBE Sonic Maximizer, which they say on their website, the only clear thing they really said, which is it adjusts the phase relationships between low, mid, and high frequencies through adding progressively longer delay times to lower frequencies. So as the frequency gets lower, it delays it longer and longer. Now, we didn't mention that because that is a weird thing to do.
You see, I read that, and first of all, it doesn't really make sense. And then at the end of it, I go, but why? Why would you do
Yeah,
that?
well, they talk a lot about overtones, harmonics, and they're correct in saying that, like, let's say you have an oboe and a clarinet. Now, an oboe and a clarinet have many fundamental frequencies that they both play, but we recognize one as being an oboe and the other one as being a clarinet because of the overtones, because of the harmonics produced by those instruments. The oboe has actually very few harmonics and overtones, which is why it's the instrument to which all the other instruments in the orchestra are tuned, because it's very nearly a perfect sine wave. There's very little in the way of harmonics and overtones, but the clarinet has piles of overtones, which makes it sound like a clarinet. Now they're saying when you play that back through a speaker, the overtones and harmonics don't arrive at the right time versus when the fundamental arrives. Like it came out of the speaker, went through the air some distance and reached your ears, and they don't arrive at the correct time because of phase problems in the electrical signal. Like that's basically their explanation. And in order to fix that, you need to make the lower frequencies, which would in this case include the fundamental, you need to delay them. Now, to what end? To have those harmonics and overtones reach your ears in time before the fundamental arrives? Because that's not how it works in real life. So are they saying that the phase relationship in the electric signal is so bad that there's like a gap between the fundamental and the harmonics, and you have to like shorten that gap by delaying the fundamental? I mean, none of it even makes sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact that it does something, when we read the review, we listened to the review and
Yeah.
listened to the review and listed what they said it actually did.
Yeah.
Because when I got all kind of manufacturers that tell me all kind of crap their stuff does. Oh yeah, fixes the black levels on your TV. It's a speaker. No, I'm telling you, you're going to see a remarkable difference in the black levels of your TV. Like, you are on some serious drugs, sir, but I will test your speaker. And you know what? They do sound all right. Now, all the stuff they said, complete crap. I reviewed the ZO2 digital subwoofer thing the entire time. I put not a in front of subwoofer, even though the name of it is a subwoofer. The guy's always kind of a subwoofer. I'm like, it's kind of a subwoofer. Like, I'm kind of a cat. I'm kind of a cat. I'm sort of animalistic, and I'm a
You're a
jerk.
mammal.
I'm a mammal, right? I sometimes whine. Cats whine, don't they? Right? So I guess I'm sort of like a cat, but I don't think anybody would agree that I am a cat. And just like your thing is not a subwoofer, it is exactly not that. Doesn't make
So
any sound.
yeah,
So
they were
hey,
describing because Josh wanted to say that it's about phase and amplitude. I'm like, well, okay, we already covered the amplitude thing because the review was saying it's basically a dynamic equalizer that makes things that are louder exponentially louder so that they
yes,
stand out more in the mix. I was like, that's actually a useful positive thing. None of the description on the website actually mentioned that. They talk about amplitude, and yet their description of what the two controls do, because there's two knobs. One says low contour, and one says process. And they say the low contour adjusts the phase relationship in the low frequencies, and the process adjusts the phase relationship in the high frequencies. I'm like, well, where did all your talk about amplitude stuff go? Because
yeah.
you only described two things, both of them being phase at two different ends of the spectrum. So there is a lot of confusion here, and I was happier with the review made me more positive on this thing. Reading all this stuff makes me go, now I don't even want to have anything to do with it. So
I know.
Josh, you pushed me farther away, Josh.
Yeah.
You pushed me farther away than where I
And if any
was.
of you would like to read up on this, we will have a link that you can
Yeah.
go to read and try to decipher exactly what the hell this thing does. All right. If you get to say shit on the podcast, I get to say hell because that's just the way it is.
Mine was a name. SCHIIT.
Hell's the place. HE double hockey sticks.
There you go.
All right, Mike. Mike sailed up and using Power Amp as his Android music player playback amp. If you remember, he asked us a while
Mm-hmm.
back which one he should use. There was another one, Phonograph, I think, that Ray suggested. I downloaded,
Ah.
but I haven't used it yet.
Okay.
He didn't come across any apps that were better, and he likes the EQ options, although he wishes there was a way to automatically switch EQ settings by genre. Yeah, that ain't never gonna happen, dude. I don't see
Well,
anybody
I mean, a
building that.
lot, you look at your music library, they usually do have the genre as one of the pieces of metadata. So it's conceivable
Yeah,
someone could write a program that looks at that particular piece of metadata and says, hey, when it's this genre, we'll use this EQ. I
I
don't know
don't
how
know.
to handle ones that are under multiple genres. That will be interesting.
Anyways, he has he doesn't really have a question, but he has an idea in mind to build a home theater pod. He was inspired by a picture, and he'd be able to build this pod within a room and make it sound as soundproof as possible. Is that a good idea? I didn't click on. I saw this when he sent it the first time.
It's an arcade cabinet.
That's
It's
what
one
it
of
is.
those
Yeah.
all,
So it'd be a near field thing,
it
basically.
would be very, very near field.
Ah, sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, these days it's gonna be they're doing these things with tractor trailer things, right? Where you like my new climbing gym here in St. Pete, they used a bunch of these things as different rooms. So like the entire bathroom is a bunch of these things that have kind of welded together, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just the tractor. And there was a lady I was talking to recently, and she and her husband wanted to build a house out of these things. And apparently, you can really do it, and it looks nice when they put a facade on the outside. But it's all tractor trailer
Hmm.
truck things,
Yep.
what do you call that? The trailer part. And they
Yeah, the
put them all
trailers. Yeah.
together to build stuff. That I could see happening. I could see you saying, here's this, you park it here, you plug it right into you put a foundation down next to your house, you plug it into your power source, and it's your standalone home theater over here.
Well, I
It
mean, a
seats
while
two
back,
rows of two.
we saw those like prefabbed like little office cubicle things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like fully encompassed. You could bring them in, you assemble them inside an existing office, but then it gives soundproofed thing. So yeah, that as I recall, those prefabbed ones were kind of expensive, but the idea of building your own pod, I mean, you are building a room within a room. It has to be a very small room within a possibly much larger room. Still a room within a room, though.
Yeah. Needs more than one seat there, dude. But yeah, interesting. All right. Oh, Jesus. Do we have enough time for this?
If we race,
I don't want to raise, but does that mean that we have to start with him next time? This is already 148.
we probably
Infinite Gary, you have A, B, C, D, E, F, E, and F. That's a
I think we
lot.
could do it. I think we could do it. And then Gary won't be bumped this week.
I don't want to bump him. All right, Infinite Gary wants to know what we think of the sim. I said I didn't want to bump him. You were laughing. That means
Oh,
said
I thought you
something
said
else.
you
I
wanted
said
to.
I didn't want to.
Oh, you didn't. Okay.
I
Good
did
thing
it.
we clarified.
Bumped him a couple times. That's
Yep.
why, and then it just adds up. It just gets more.
That's right.
You can't bump him too many times, so you end up with a whole Infinite Gary podcast. He wants to know what we think of the Sim Audio Moon 400M monoblock amplifiers. This is their least expensive model, although still priced at $6,500 a pair. It
Yeah.
makes the claim of having no overall feedback. Bullshit. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Also, it says immeasurable intermodulation distortion, unmeasurable intermodulation distortion. I'm sorry, I gagged on that one because that's obviously also crap. And 400 watts of Class AB output, with the first 10 watts being pure Class A, all in a relatively compact 30-pound chassis. I thought this thing was a Class D amp.
I was sort of expecting that, just the size and the weight of it.
It's way too small to be what they say it is. To be honest with you, a Class AB with the first 10 watts being pure Class A and 400 watts per channel, but in their monoblocks,
But I mean, if you
really small.
if you look at like Emotiva's XPA 1L, it's even smaller than this one, and it's got the first 30 watts are pure Class A. And it doesn't go up to 400 watts because
I
of
thought they
200.
would. Anyway, so going back to Josh, who's sent us the thing, whatever. Sim Audio. They just make all sorts of stupid claims that make no sense. No overall feedback. It's impossible. You can't make an amplifier that doesn't have overall feedback. It's impossible.
That would be a very bad. Well, you could. It would just be a very bad thing.
Yeah. Unmeasurable intermodulation distortion. Not only is that impossible, just about, but there's a review from Soundstage where they say, well, they say it's unmeasurable, but we measured it, and here it is.
And here's the number.
Here is the number that you have. So I don't think that I would recommend any company that would outright lie like this. Outright lie to their customers. No, thinking that you would not read a thorough review that when it's available that clearly shows them to be liars, and then they're going to price this stuff at $6,500 a pair. I just don't trust them. I'm sorry. They may make the best amplifier in the world, but I don't trust them.
It's weird because why would you You're listing things that aren't even desirable. So why lie?
Things that nobody else is listing, which makes them unique.
I was gonna say, why lie about something that isn't even desirable? But yes, you're right. Yeah, it's claiming something.
We'll
unique.
link up the product, the review, and the measurements as well.
Yeah, I just want to say their own specs. Once again, I'm looking at signal to noise ratio because I want to know about noise floor, and it is not impressive, which isn't surprising actually when the first 10 watts are pure Class A, because Class A amplification, one of the issues about Class A is it has a noise floor. It has so much thermal output that it is impossible to not have a hiss coming through your speakers. So once again, things that sound good to audiophiles. I mean, it was fine having that hiss when your source was nothing but phono records because they have a louder hiss.
And you probably had crappy, speakers back in the day that weren't that efficient and all this other stuff. So yeah, you never heard it anyways. Gary also had the experience of watching the uncalibrated display at someone else's house for several hours. When he got back home, his own calibrated display seemed dim and lackluster. Took an hour or so for him to get used to his own display again. So now Gary can understand why most people don't know or care about professional calibration. Even though he knows better, his own brain was telling him that the inaccurate image looked better, at least for a while. And that's simply because of how bright it is. And that's why when people are out of the room, you fix it. That's what I do.
I will also say,
houses,
I know that Gary has had his professional calibrators actually do the 30-foot Lambert thing, like the actual 100 nit peak brightness, which even amongst people who get professional calibration, they will often juice that a little bit because you're not in pitch blackness. So, he's gone for real accuracy. And as soon as you have a tiny bit of ambient light, real accuracy looks kind of dim, because it is actually kind of dim.
There you go. Over at AVS Forum, Scott Wilkinson made a post to discuss can one audio system serve movies and music equally well. And you, sir, Rob, made the first reply in that thread. Wow. Yeah. He said, I've been stalking you. No, it said, in a one-man theater, there'd be no need for a physical center channel. One would have already established astonishing imaging from the front, left, right pair. So chances are high that a physical center channel in such a setup would only serve to decrease the perfect timbre match and diminish the sound quality. In this instance, where there is one and only one seating position, a phantom center would most likely deliver the better experience, end quote. Gary wants to know if the center channel speaker is diminishing his sound quality. It uses you are just a troublemaker, is what you are, sir. It uses identical drivers to his front, left, and right speakers. Would that not allow it to have identical timbre? And what happens when the center channel information gets sent to the front, left, and right speakers in the absence of physical center channel? Could all of that additional information diminish the sound quality? All right, in reverse, could
Mhm.
all of that additional information diminish the sound quality? No.
No.
And what happens when the center channel information gets sent to the left or right speakers in the absence of the physical speaker? Half of what's going into the center channel goes to the left, and the other half goes to the right. And then when they play them at the same time at you, your brain puts them together as coming from the middle. That's what happens.
Mhm.
Going backwards again. Okay. It uses identical drivers to its left-right speakers. Would that not allow it to have identical timbre? No. Does not necessarily mean
Not
it's going to have
necessarily. Yeah.
identical timbre. If it is lower, or if it is closer to a wall, or if it's angled slightly, or if it's a little bit different.
Or the fact that it's in a horizontally oriented cabinet instead of a vertically oriented
Exactly.
cabinet.
All those things can affect timbre. So
Yeah.
yes, the timbre can, just because you have the exact same speaker manufacturer, exact same speaker, it can have a slightly different timbre, and you'll hear that when you do the pink noise.
Yeah, if it were down to the drivers, then the whole thing of taking a Dapolito array, woofer on top, tweeter just below that, another woofer below that, just turning it horizontally wouldn't change the timbre because you didn't change anything about the speaker other than turning it horizontally.
Yeah.
But we all know that the timbre does change when you do that. So it isn't just the drivers, it isn't even having the identical cabinet. The orientation and where it's placed in the room do change things, which is why, we need things like acoustic treatments and EQ and calibration,
Yeah.
so that we can try and get back to that perfect timbre match.
So Gary wants to know if his center channel speaker is diminishing his sound quality. I don't know, never been there, haven't heard it. But you can test this very easily. God help us for encouraging him to go back into the settings. But you can unplug that speaker, or just turn it off from the settings and say you no longer just put no to center channel, and then listen, and then put yes to center channel. And then listen
in an ideal world, and this would be very difficult to do in anything other than a one-man theater where you are always sitting in the exact same spot. But in an ideal world, you could turn off the center channel, turn it back on, turn it off, turn it on, and you would never be able to tell. It would just be completely seamless, whether it's actually a physical center speaker making that sound or it's just the front, left, and right speakers creating the phantom center. That's the ideal that we're kind of shooting for. It's nearly impossible to achieve. It is really, really hard to achieve
very
that.
close.
But it's very, very close, yeah.
Gary has also found that when listening to only two-channel, the phantom center effect can be so convincing it actually seems to separate the singer from the rest of the band. Is it possible that to have imaging that's too much of a good thing? No, that's not possible.
No, I certainly get that effect when I, say, use an up mixer and use my physical center speaker. It's not as though doing that eliminates that effect of the singer being separated from the band.
Yeah.
If anything, it usually makes it even more distinct because the timbre isn't completely perfect,
Right.
which then lets you separate it even more. So, no, I mean, it's supposed to sound as though that singer is front and center. If it sounds anything other, if it sounds more diffuse, like it's spread more between your left and right speakers, then that means something has actually kind of gone awry, because your left and right ear are supposed to be getting the exact same sound, which is what clues your brain into it being a center image. And if it's diffused, it means something went kind of wrong. So, no, can't have too much of a good thing in that particular case.
Right. We've mentioned how Gary's infinite baffle subwoofer is still interacting with this room. That is true. And since it cannot be physically moved, there's really no way to adjust its room interaction once it has been installed.
Yep.
Yes, the downside. But Gary wants to know if there's any standalone subwoofers, even if it would require multiples of them, that could serve as the equivalent substitute for the 4 18-inch drivers he has installed. I am seeing
just in like raw output, I guess he's saying.
A stack of power sound audios mirror image to wherever his infinite baffle sub is now. That's what I've got in my head. It's like a stack of these massive subwoofers back there. He's like, equaled out the bass. And that would be it. That's about the only thing I can think of, right?
I mean, I would certainly say like the JTR, because I mean, not only is the JTR an 18-inch driver, it's in a folded horn.
Ooh, yeah.
Which, if you want output and you want extension, you got it. Although it is a huge box. I mean, the whole point of the infinite baffle sub is that it's not taking up any floor space in your room because it's embedded in the wall or the ceiling or the floor and using whatever's on the other side of that wall, ceiling, or floor as its cabinet, essentially. So yeah, no, there are subs, standalone subs that could equal the output and extension. They're just insanely large.
They're big. That's the whole thing. You could put something back there.
You could.
Or back. I don't know where it's infinite baffle sub, but on the other side of the room from it. That's what you're thinking. I don't know that you need to think that. But yeah. I'm wondering if you could just you could just take that infinite baffle sub and cross it over at like 20 hertz.
20 hertz.
Like 22. Like it just does like the super duper low stuff and let everything else be handled by the other subs that are in his room.
Yeah, I would do 30. I would do 30 hertz.
Yeah.
It can handle the last 10.
You get the last 10 audible and everything subsonic. Andrew Jones was on the Home Theater Geeks podcast to promote his new ELAC debut series speakers. His last speakers were the Pioneer Elite, of course. Will the ELAC speakers be any different? There's going to be more expensive, so I would imagine they're going to be better.
Well, they're more expensive than his original Pioneer speakers. They are less expensive than the Pioneer Elite speakers.
Oh, okay. I didn't
they
realize that.
slot into the middle in terms of price point.
That a couple times. So they're going to be better than. Hopefully, they'll be better than the cheap ones that we've been recommending over and over again, and it sounds slightly less good, or maybe as good as the Elite ones.
They are different from the Pioneer Elite speakers because the ELAC speakers do not use concentric drivers. He didn't have enough room in the budget to use. Andrew Jones, we know, likes concentric drivers, but he wasn't able to use concentric drivers at this price point. So we know they'll be, different. They are not identical. There's no question about that. However, Andrew Jones uses waveguides on those separate tweeters so that they still have similar dispersion to the mid-range drivers that are below them. He obviously goes for a particular set of measurements in all the speakers he designs. It's how close he can get to his targets based on the price points. So I would not expect these to sound wildly different. Like at a first glance, at a first listen, I would expect them to sound quite similar because it is the same designer.
With designers and manufacturers, especially if they have a lead designer, their stuff all sounds the same. And there was the guy that was what's his name?
Vance Dickinson from Emotiva.
Yes, because he was at Atlanta Tech before that, and he designed some speakers from and every time I came across the speaker, I'm like, that's that same dude.
Yep.
That's the same dude. You could always tell. They had like that sort of offset tweeter thingy, and then you would be able to go like all the way around the stupid speaker and it sounded the same everywhere. You know what I mean? It had the widest dispersion. Really even dispersion all the way across. Really, really cool. But it was you could always tell his speakers, no matter who he designed for, it always ended up sounding like one of his speakers. It's like a signature.
Yeah, on that podcast that Andrew Jones was on, he mentioned that these are the name debut speakers for ELAC is fitting because he is already working on more expensive speaker lines for ELAC. So they started with these. These are their entry-level ones. These are the lowest priced ones they're going to have. Well, who knows? Maybe in the future he'll make something even less expensive. But for now, this is the low end. He's going to be going to more expensive ones, which, Ray has already chimed in, through email. He's like, he's got some concentric driver designs coming for ELAC, and I do not doubt that one tiny little bit. So, yeah.
All right. That got through Gary, believe it or not.
Well, since Joshua's question is for Gary, why don't we make that the last one?
He has a question for Gary. He blasted Disco Fry's Open Your Eyes Psychic Tape Remix.
That's the name of the track.
The hell? Anyways, on his Clips Towers and PC 2000 subwoofers, and the bass overtook his whole house. Probably sitting in the mode. He wants to know everyone else's experience, especially Gary's infinite baffle subwoofer. Have you ever experienced that? We've all experienced that. If you've got two subs, you've experienced it. But if you've got one sub and sat in the wrong place, you definitely experienced it.
I was going to say you actually can experience it more when you have one sub, because if you get right in that room mode, right in the peak, which can totally happen when the dimension of your room is exactly the same length as one complete cycle of that note, right in the middle of the room, there is a huge peak where everything is completely doubling up, like perfectly doubling up, which means it just builds and builds and builds. It could actually be a really quiet sound, and it will sound tremendously loud because every time that sound waves bounce back and forth, it doubles itself up. So that could, if you have, I know it's sort of a pulsing bass line that goes through this song,
Yeah.
and so if that happened to line up, if that's the frequency that creates a standing room wave in your room and you're sitting in the peak of that standing wave, that's what was going on there.
When I got my Axiom EP500, I plugged it in. I turned the volume to half, like you're
Uh-huh.
supposed to, or 12 o'clock, whatever it is. And I turned it on, and it was way too loud for my room. And I turned it on, and stuff, and like I watched like the opening scene to the Attack of the Clones just so I could hear the flyover. I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh my god, I'm gonna break something! Like lights were rattling, like everything, and I had like some random dudes. They were picking up like a TV I was sending back or
Uh-huh.
something. And I just got the sub a few minutes, like a little bit before them, and I set everything up. And I turned it on. I'm like, oh, so what are you giving this TV back? Oh, I reviewed it. Oh, what are you doing right now? Oh, I just got the subwoofer, about to turn it on. And, oh, turn it on. Oh my god, are you okay? I'm like, I think I did something wrong.
This though is a perfect example. It's the exact reason why when you do get a second sub or four subwoofers
Yes.
and you place them across the room from one another, why it can all of a sudden sound way quieter. And you're like, how is that possible? I just doubled the amount of subwoofers in my room, two identical ones where the last one sounded crazy loud and practically shook my house down. It's like because they're eliminating that standing wave now. That's why.
You keep saying
Yeah.
4 subwoofers. Did you buy 2 more subwoofers?
No, I didn't buy two more subwoofers.
Oh,
I
buy
wanted to
2 more
point it out
subwoofers.
because shoot, I forgot his name now. But the fellow who asked us about our opinion of four subs, I wanted to make it clear that we do not think two subs is as far as you should ever go. It is very
We think
reasonable
it's
to go
as
to
far
four.
as you will go. We don't think it's as far as you
Exactly.
to go. Will.
Because if you
Should.
can eliminate the standing waves front to back and side to side, why not do so?
All right. Let's see. Who do we have left? We've got Barney with A, B, C, D, E
That's the
question.
second week he got bumped. I'm sorry, Barney, but
Sucks to be
that's
you.
the way it's going to be.
Jonathan's got a bunch of long names for us to read. John B. That's mostly just comments. We'll get to him next week. Vince and Steven. And then I just got a question from Kyle as well. So we'll be addressing you guys next week.
Proof positive in the case of Steven that even when you send us a donation, doesn't mean you get answered on the same week. Sorry, Steven,
dude.
but next week.
We'll get you. We tried.
And thank you for your donation.
Thank you. That's right. We do have to thank our listeners of the week one more
Yes.
time. They are Steven and Jordan for their donations, as well as Sushmit for his recommendation, or at least, yeah, as our telling people that he got a subwoofer because of us.
Mhm.
All right. If you want to ask us a question, it's Tom at avrant.com, Rob at avrant.com. Come to the website, www.avrant.com. You can comment there. Facebook.com/avrant podcast. And at First Reflect is Rob's Twitter, and at avrant_Tom for me.
Mhm.
For avrant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
This audio is going to be a mess. All right, guys. I will start the after party in a few. Okay, bye.